Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the New York City Planning Commission, our public meeting of June 29, 2022. My name is Dan Garodnick, and I am the chair of the City Planning Commission. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, today is the day when we hear from members of the public on land use applications that are in public review. And today's public hearings include 3 applications for new offices to help city agencies and state agencies better serve New Yorkers, as well as a project with several hundred homes, including affordable homes in the Bronx. The public will be able to testify here on applications for new offices for the Office of Court Administration in downtown Brooklyn, new offices for the Queens District Attorney in Kew Gardens, Queens, and new offices for the city's law department in Jamaica, Queens. These new spaces aim to help these city agencies better to fulfill their duties to the public. The City Planning Commission today will also hold a public hearing on 4 new buildings with about 300 homes, including homes for veterans and affordable senior housing, a grocery store, youth rec center, shops, and offices located along Bruckner Boulevard in the Bronx. And we're looking forward to a good discussion on all of these items today. And before we go through the approval of our meeting minutes, the schedule of future hearings, and a couple of votes, we have a very special guest with a very special presentation. So before we kick off our official public meeting today, I would like to welcome the Manhattan Borough President, Mark Levine, to say a few words. And we are so delighted to have you here, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair Garodnick. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. I just want to very, very briefly acknowledge the extraordinary tenure of board member Ann Levin, who is concluding a close to 13-year run appointed by a succession of Manhattan Borough presidents, and has just been such a force on this board, who brought formidable experience as a former chair of land use of Manhattan Community Board 4, who has consistently become known for her thoughtful, her substantive, and often compassionate questioning of these difficult topics. Her mark can be seen on a long succession of major consequential land use projects throughout the world and beyond, from the High Line to Hudson Yards to Moynihan Station. And we are, in honor of this record of achievement, we are presenting her with a proclamation today that I won't read. We'll spare you, but it's got lots of eloquent whereases and therefores about her tenure. I think Lisette Chaparro is there in the conference room and actually has the physical proclamation. Maybe you can wave it to the crowd there, Lisette. But again, I'm incredibly grateful for the service of Ann Levin. I know she's going to continue to serve. She leads in a variety of nonprofits like Hudson Guild and others around the city and far beyond. And I'm also thrilled that her successor, our new appointee, Leila Bozorg, is going to be continuing the tradition as our Manhattan Borough President appointee, and I believe she's there as well. So with immense gratitude to Ann Levin, thank you on behalf of all of us here in the Manhattan Borough President's office.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We appreciate the kind words, and we, of course, all share them and have expressed them to Commissioner Levin directly. And we thank you for joining us here and for sending us such terrific candidates. We really appreciate it. We've had such a great privilege in working with Commissioner Levin. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let me thank you, Mr. President. Let me go to Ryan Singer, the Senior Director of Land Use and Commission Operations, who is going to take us through the logistics of the day and outline some general information about this remote public hearing and how you may participate. Ryan, go ahead.
Certainly. So verbal testimony may be provided online or by calling in on your telephone. If you wish to speak, you must register through the NYC Engage portal. To access the hearing, just register through the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. A link to join the hearing is on the landing page after you register. So don't close that landing page without first clicking on the link. If you are accessing the hearing via phone and you wish to speak, you must register with the dial-in participant hotline at the numbers listed on the screen. If one of the numbers is busy, please try another one. The meeting ID is 618-237-7396. Press pound to skip the participation ID, and the password is the numeral 1. The phone numbers are also posted on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. Note that no matter how you're accessing the meeting, you must register to speak before you do so. And those accessing the meeting online will have the option to turn on their camera while giving testimony. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be notified and promoted to a panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and grant you the ability to turn on your camera. So listen closely for your name to be called. There will be a short period where it will appear that you're no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed. You should rejoin the meeting as a panelist. If you're accessing the hearing via phone, your name will be called from the list of registered speakers. Once your name has been called, you'll be given the ability to unmute yourself. And you do this by pressing *6 to unmute your phone. For those listening to the hearing through the online live stream who have not yet registered, but decide that they wish to speak during the meeting, you must first register to speak through the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. Likewise, for those accessing the hearing via phone who have not yet registered to speak but wish to do so, you must also first register through the dial-in participant hotline that I described a moment ago. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes of testimony, with a few exceptions. Elected officials are accorded the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. If consecutive translation services are being used, the time will be extended to 5 minutes. And if an applicant team with 3 or more speakers wishes to make a team presentation, the team will generally be allowed a total of 10 minutes. The chair will announce when the time limit is reached. Be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. If you're watching the proceedings via the live stream, make sure that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony. Otherwise, you will hear an echo. If you wish to submit written testimony, it should be submitted to the Department of City Planning. The mailing and email addresses can be found on our website, planning.nyc.gov. And lastly, note that this remote public hearing is being recorded.
Excellent. As always, thank you, Ryan. Let me kick things off. Again, welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining us. Madam Secretary, I'd ask you to please begin the meeting.
Good morning. This is a City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal. Today is Wednesday, June 29th, 2022. I will now call the roll. Chair Garodnick.
Here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Burney.
Here.
Commissioner Cerullo.
You're muted.
Yeah, here. Sorry.
Commissioner Dueck.
Here.
Commissioner Edie.
Here.
Commissioner Goodridge. Commissioner Goodridge.
Is absent today.
Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Ortiz. Here. Commissioner Ramprashad.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public meeting of Wednesday, June 8th, 2022.
Thank you very much. On the minutes, I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 8th, 2022. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, the minutes are approved.
Scheduling, calendar numbers 1 and 2. We have resolutions for adoption scheduling Wednesday, July 13th, 2022 for a remote public hearing to be held through the NYC Engage portal.
On the resolutions, calendars 1 and 2, I make a motion to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Resolutions are adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 5. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 3 and 4, 258 Flag Place, CD2, calendar number 3, N220271 ZAR, calendar number 4, N220272 ZAR, in the matter of an application for the grant of authorizations concerning 258 Flag Place for adoption on calendar numbers 3 and 4. Chair Garodnick,
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Duick,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin, and Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
You skipped
Calendar number-
Edie.
Oh, Commissioner Edie, so sorry.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 3 and 4 have been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 5 and 6. Calendar number 5, CD3, N220259 RCR, 859 Lamont Avenue. Calendar number 6, CD3, N220308 RCR, 54 Ridgecrest Avenue. And the matter of applications for the grant of certifications concerning 859 Lamont Avenue and 54 Ridgecrest Avenue for adoption on calendar numbers 5 and 6. Chair Garodnick,
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Duick,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 5 and 6. Commissioner
Excuse me, you
Marin.
skipped over me. Yes.
Commissioner Marin, sorry.
That's okay.
Calendar
One
numbers 5 and 6 have been adopted. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 6.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. And we are going to hear a number of items today. We ask those who are testifying to limit the remarks to 3 minutes. After that time, you will be muted. And of course, we expect the usual courtesy and decorum to be observed at all times during testimony today before the City Planning Commission. Madam Secretary, would you like to call the first item?
Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 7, 1 Willoughby Square OCA, CD2, N220389 PXK, public hearing in the matter of an application for the notice of intent to acquire office space concerning 1 Willoughby Square OCA, Office of Court Administration.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And on behalf of the applicant and applicant team here, we have a variety of people. We've got Paul Kenny, Chris Grove, Marianne Ritz, Rosanna D'Amelio, Evan Tootin, Rosia Fajardo, and also Javier Carrera. So I don't know which of you will be speaking on behalf of the group, but please do identify yourself. And as soon as you're ready, you can go ahead and get started.
Good morning. This is Paul Kenny. I'll be speaking on behalf of our presenters. Good morning, commissioners. I am Paul Kenny, Chief Clerk of the Appellate Term, 2nd Department within the Office of Court Administration. After the presentation, I'll be joined by Rosanna D'Amelio, Director of Finance and Operations at the Appellate Division, and Xavier Carrera, Lease Negotiator for the Department of Citywide Administrative Service for questions and answers. We are here to present the proposed relocation of the Appellate Term office space from 141 Livingston Street to 1 Willoughby Square in Brooklyn. Next slide, please. The Appellate Term is an appeals court authorized by the New York State Constitution. We hear appeals from trial courts in 10 New York State counties, covering more than half the population of the state. A significant majority of the appeals come from 3 New York City boroughs, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. Next slide, please. In New York City, we hear appeals from the New York City Criminal Court, New York City Civil Court, and Housing Court in those 3 boroughs. The Appellate Term has approximately 40 employees, including clerks, court officers, IT personnel, and up to 17 attorneys. Next slide, please. Yes, there we go. Currently, the appellate term occupies the 14th and 15th floors of a privately owned building at 141 Livingston Street, highlighted in yellow on this slide. The current lease at 141 Livingston Street expires in 2025, and the landlord will not renew the lease. The landlord has new plans for the building. Next slide, please. We are proposing relocating the court approximately 4 blocks from its current location to 1 Willoughby Square, highlighted in green on this slide. The proposed office space at 1 Willoughby Square meets the court's space needs and security requirements. Next slide, please. Location, location, location. Also, the proposed office space at 1 Willoughby Square is ideally located for us. It is in close proximity to the court buildings that we interact with on a regular basis. We will hold our proceedings at Kings County Supreme Court at 320 J Street. We get security personnel from 45 Monroe Place, and most of our appeals and court users come from 120 Skemmerhorn Street and 141 Livingston Street. 1 Willoughby Square, that's highlighted in pink. 1 Willoughby Square is well served by public transportation and even has a 250 space bike garage. There are approximately 10 subway lines nearby. Next slide, please. For your information, on this page, we have a sketch of the ground floor of 1 Willoughby Square. Next slide. Next is the 10th floor of 1 Willoughby Square. And last but not least, next slide, is the 11th floor of 1 Willoughby Square. We're available for questions and answers if you have any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Let's see if we do here. Let me see. Okay, Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you. Just to clarify, the public doesn't actually appear in front of the appellate court.
Well, actually, they would on the 11th floor of this proposed space. If they're filing, mostly attorneys filing papers or litigants that are appealing lower court decisions, they would appear personally at the appellate term in some instances.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions? Okay, Mr. Kenny, I think we can let you off easy here today. We appreciate it. Anything else to add, or any other members of your team wish to speak?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. All right. Terrific. And I see no members of the public wishing to testify on this item. So we will close the hearing on calendar number 7, 1 Willoughby Square. And I'm going to ask the calendar officer to call the next one. Thank you, Mr. Kenny, and thanks to all.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 8, Queens DA office space at 8002 Kew Gardens Road. CD9 in 220394PXQ, public hearing in the matter of an application concerning the notice of intent to acquire office space concerning Queens DA office space at 8002 Kew Gardens Road.
Great. Thank you very much. And before we get to this, I just want to make sure that I have not stranded Javier Carrera from the last item. I believe that he was part of the applicant team, but he's designated separately here on my notes. We'll ask my team just to quickly review and advise before we go on to this next one.
Yes, I believe that's the case. He is a
Okay, great
employee, just signed up separately.
Great, that's what I thought. All right, now on to the Queens DA office space at 8002 Kew Gardens Road. We have an applicant team which includes Abigail Ryder, Jason Ortiz, Veronica Casella, and Yijun Wang. So welcome. Whenever you're ready, please begin.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Veronica Casella. I am the Director of Operations here for the Queens District Attorney. We're here today to request office space at 8002 Kew Gardens Road. Next slide. This is just an overview of the project. Next slide. The Queens District Attorney is responsible for the investigation and prosecution of crimes in Queens County. Our office operates out of 4 Kew Garden office spaces located in proximity to the Queens Criminal Court. Our office has long experienced a need for additional office space. This office space allocation reflects square footage additions beyond a previously approved PX application and facilitates future expansion to the Queens DA footprint. Additional office space is needed to alleviate overcrowding conditions, hire additional personnel to meet the demands of the criminal justice reform legislation, and to address the rise in crime. Next slide, please. This is an overview of our 4 office buildings. The one highlighted in yellow is 8002 Kew Gardens Road. Next slide, please. The proposed office space occupies approximately 3,870 square feet on the 7th floor of a 12-story building located at 8002 Kew Gardens Road. Approximately 15 to 20 staff members will be accommodated. The space expands on existing QDA office space in the building and is close to the Queens Criminal Courthouse and our other office spaces. The area is well served by mass transit, by the E&F trains, the Long Island Railroad, and numerous bus lines. There are also several parking garages in the area. Next slide, please. This is a footprint of the space that we want to acquire on the 7th floor of this building. Next slide. This is the proposed use. It'll have a conference area, a waiting area, a pantry, some filing space, approximately 12 offices to accommodate almost 20 staff members, a dedicated restroom, and in addition to that, there's other restrooms on the floor. Next slide. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. We appreciate your being here with us today, and we know that you all have your space in a variety of different buildings, and that you have significant needs over there at the Queens District Attorney's Office. So obviously we're interested in helping however we can here. So let me just see if there are questions though from the Commission. All right. Well, Ms. Casella, thank you very much. We appreciate your being here. We wish you the best with all this, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
I will note that I do not see members of the public wishing to testify on the Queens DA office space at 8002 Kew Gardens Road. So I will close the hearing on this item, and I'm going to ask our calendar officer to call the next item, which is also office space, also in the Great Borough of Queens. Madam Secretary.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 9, Law Department office space at 16210 Jamaica Avenue, CD 12 N220395 PXQ, public hearing in the matter of an application for a notice of intent to acquire office space concerning Law Department office space at 16210 Jamaica Avenue.
Great. Thank you very much. Oops. Thank you very much. We have 3 people here as part of the applicant team. Jenny Nagel Indigoyen, Carrie Lowe, and Scott Bernstein. And whenever you all are ready, we're ready for you.
Good morning. My name is Jen Nagel Indigoyen. I'm here on behalf of the application team to present to you our proposed office space acquisition in Queens for a family court division at Gertz Plaza, which is located at 16210 Jamaica Avenue. Next slide, please. The New York City Law Department represents the city, the mayor, and other elected officials and city agencies in all affirmative and defensive civil litigation as well as handling juvenile delinquency proceedings brought in family court and administrative code enforcement proceedings brought in criminal court. Raise the age legislation, which was passed in 2017, changed the age of criminal responsibility to 18 years of age. It took place in 2 stages. For 16-year-olds, it took place on October 1st, 2018, and for 17-year-olds on October 1st, 2019. Next slide, please. The Queens Family Court Division now expects to receive up to 1,000 referrals annually. Many of these cases in family court involve actions against the most vulnerable members of the community, including very young victims of sexual assault, as well as assault, robbery, and family violence. These cases involve very careful review and assessment through confidential communications, which lead to the resolution of sensitive cases in the family court under some of the strictest time constraints under the law. Next slide, please. To handle the new staff, the new cases, we got additional staff from OMB, and we now need additional office space. Where our existing family court space at the Queens Family Court is not sufficient to house all the new staff. So we're looking for a space with 57 to accommodate 57 staff members, 28 attorneys, and 29 other support professionals that is close to the Queens Family Court building and close to the other law department offices and the other courts, as well as being accessible by public transportation and a safe and confidential location where we can interview victims and witnesses who frequently are minors. Next slide, please. As you can see, our selected site, Gertz Plaza, which is to the right of your screen, is very close to the family court, only a few blocks away, a few more blocks away from the Queens Supreme Court and the Queens Civil Court, as well as being close to our location on Sutphin. Next slide, please. This site, called Gertz Plaza, fulfills all of our needs. Like I mentioned, it's within walking distance to the Queens Family Court building. It's close to public transit. It has a great space layout for us. And there's new exterior lighting along the retail frontage, which will enhance security in the area. Next slide, please. And here you can see our proposed space layout. Clients will enter into the purple area to the left of your screen. That's the client area. Then we have a secure access door, which has our offices and our conference rooms to the right. At this point, I'm done. If anybody has any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Great, thank you very much. Let me see here if we have any questions from the commission. Okay, I see none. So thank you very much. Our office space matters today have been quite easy. We wish you well with all of your important work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I am going to close the hearing on this item, calendar number 9, because I do not see members of the public wishing to testify, and I'm going to ask our calendar officer to call the next item on our agenda.
Borough of the Bronx, calendars numbers 10 and 11, Bruckner Sites Rezoning. CD 12, calendar number 10, C220007 ZMX, calendar number 11, N220008 ZRX. Public hearing and the matter of an application for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning Bruckner Sites rezoning.
Thank you very much. We are going to hear from the applicant team, which is Peter Bavona, Jacqueline Scaranici, Pablo Choclin, and then we have some elected officials, at least one present, that we are going to turn to first. So to the applicant team, whenever you are ready, please go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Garodnick and Commissioners. My name is Jacqueline Scarinci of Ackerman LLP, and I am joined here today by Peter Bavona, the owner and operator of Superfood Town of Throgsneck, and Pablo Hochland of Off-Gang Architects. We thank you for your time to present the Bruckner Sites rezoning, and we are here today to share our vision for this unique area of the Bruckner that is in need of revitalization and modest new growth. I will now turn it over to Pablo Hochland of Off-Gang Architects. Sorry, it doesn't look like he's on, so I will continue. This proposal applies to, sorry, next slide, please. This proposal applies to 4 block fronts along the Bruckner Expressway that are on the fringe of what is the lower density growth management area and will not directly impact the lower density character north of the Bruckner Boulevard that members of the Community Board 10 have strongly expressed their concerns for. The project area is just north of the Throgs Neck bid and is characterized more by its commercial activity as it fronts on both Bruckner Boulevard and East Tremont Avenue, 2 zoning wide streets, 100 feet in width that can support additional growth. To the west, the sites are separated from the rest of the area by the 180-acre St. Raymond Cemetery that cuts through the Throgs Neck Schuylerville neighborhood, and to the east, Miele Park and PSX 014. 2 of the proposed development sites, sites C and D, have long been vacant and are constrained due to current zoning. And sites A and B are in need of revitalization and redevelopment with new housing opportunities to support mixed-use development. Next slide, please. The applicant is requesting 3 zoning and land use actions from the commission. The first is a zoning map amendment from the existing R41, R41C12, and R4A zoning districts to an R6A C24 zoning district over the block fronts bounded by Crosby Avenue to the east, the current site of the superfood town, to Revere Avenue on the west, and from an R41 zoning district to the block front south of Gifford Avenue and east of Balcom from R41 to an R5B zoning, C24 zoning district. The second action requested is a zoning text amendment to designate portions of the project area and MIH area. And finally, a related action to eliminate a portion of Meyer Street that is unutilized, affecting development site B. Next slide, please. As the commissioners are all aware, all of the New York City is facing an affordable housing crisis. Locally, members of Community Board 10 are not immune to this need. Additionally, they face other challenges like food insecurity, rising costs of living, small businesses struggling to stay open, and the skyrocketing cost of living. We are proposing an investment in this community that we really believe can help address some of these challenges. From an expanded and modernized supermarket to opportunities for small business to mixed income housing that will allow longtime residents to stay in the neighborhood that they've always called home. Community Board 10 has some of the lowest levels of housing production over the past 20 years in New York City, and its rental vacancy rate is only 2.4%. There is a need for new housing. In Throgs Neck, many young people are finding they are unable to afford to live in the community they grew up in, while seniors and renters facing retirement worry they could not get priced out of their neighborhood. Every neighborhood has a responsibility to create affordable housing to meet the city's needs. In addition, this project focuses on the needs of Throgs Neck, including the need for the supermarket to remain within the community, permanently affordable housing without city subsidy, a youth recreation center, senior affordable housing, and veterans housing. And of course, this economic impact of creating new quality jobs and retaining 85 supermarket jobs within the community. Next slide, please. Bronx Community District 10's needs highlighted the need for a youth wellness and recreation center. So Site B within the rezoning area has proposed a 23,703 square foot community facility space for a youth recreation center, sports, health, and after-school programs. Next slide, please. This project will create 99 units of permanently affordable housing across 3 sites in accordance with MIH option 2. The overall rental vacancy rate is very low, as noted, and additionally, 25.9% of renters are severely rent burdened and spend more than 50% of their household income on rent. Next slide, please. The original proposal included a market rate building with MIH units for Site C, but given the need that we've heard throughout this process that senior affordable housing is most in need within this community, the team has initiated the process with the HPD to make this site 100% affordable housing for seniors. While all units will be subject to a 30-year regulatory agreement, 30 of the project's units will be permanently affordable, And the Sarah buildings allow for families making from $0 up to $53,400. Next slide, please. In addition, we also heard the need for veterans housing within the Throgsneck community. The team has partnered with the Tunnel to Towers Stephen Siller Foundation for Site D to lease 22 units of veterans housing. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation serves veterans all over the country, but they, in particular, this site will have a local preference for Throgsneck and Brock's residents. Next slide, please. I'll now turn it over to Peter Bavona, the owner of Site A.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning. We can hear you.
Oh, sorry. First time at bat here.
That's okay. That's all right. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioner. As owner and operator of the superfood town of Throgsneck, for the last 20 years, we have served this community with quality, affordable food at our supermarket. We shared this map to show you that we are one of the main supermarkets within a 1 mile radius. 2,000 customers per day shop with us. And with the closure of our supermarket, the area is in risk of food insecurity. Our supermarket faces many challenges today. We have alarming rates of inflation. We have alarming rates of inflation like any other business in the city. Without the potential for redevelopment, we have to permanently close. We have 85 supermarket employees that many of them have been with us since day one. The rezoning presents the opportunity to activate this portion of the Bruckner with new commercial activity, new residents that can bring the much needed services for families, seniors, youth to this community. The economic impact. Here is the summary of the overall jobs that has committed to bringing back the 85 supermarket jobs. We have committed to quality building services, worker jobs with 32 BJ that are inclusive of 14 jobs along the 4 sites. Additional jobs will be generated by senior services and youth recreation centers proposed. Economic development, commercial development along the important corridor of both Bruckner Boulevard and East Tremont is extremely important to the future of this community. To summarize our overall project, our proposal, this will be 4 new developments phased over time that will bring a total of 359 new homes, 97 permanently affordable housing, including senior affordable housing, housing for veterans, a youth recreation center, and what's near and dear to my heart is keeping the superfood town of Throgsneck open for generations to come in our family. We have long invested. We have been long invested in this community for over 22 years. We've put into this supermarket our lives, and energy costs are crippling us. We need to basically create a program where we were able to become profitable over the long term. Supermarkets run on a very thin razor margin, where we feel that if we don't have the opportunity to redevelop the property, a closure of the supermarket will be imminent. Supermarkets pay very low rent, where we're being offered higher rents for repurposing the property. That is not our intention. Our intention is to stay in Throgsneck and keep the food going for as long as we can. We have our next generation of family that's looking to take over the business and to be part of this community.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I apologize for being nervous.
No, you're fine. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Is there anything more from the applicant team?
No, we thank you for your time, commissioners, and we look forward to responding to your questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let me kick off a few questions here and get the ball rolling. Obviously you're proposing a few hundred units across 4 buildings. Most of the units, well, let's see. You have about roughly the same number of units in A, B, and C, and then fewer in D. Can you break down for us how many units of affordable housing we have seen in this community board or council district in recent years?
I apologize. I was knocked out of as a panelist, but I am back.
Welcome back. Did you hear the question?
Question was, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. I want to know if you can share the total production of affordable housing units in this community district or council district in recent years, if you have those numbers available to you.
Sure. Just recently, the New York City Housing Conference did a study on affordable housing production across all the council districts. And in particular, District 13 has produced 529 units, which is significantly less than the citywide average with over the same period, which was from 2015 to 2019. And the citywide average is 1,300 units.
I see. So this was 529 and the city was 1,300?
That's correct.
Okay. Some of the concerns raised in the neighborhood were about a prior rezoning that had been done in the neighborhood well, this was the Throgs Neck rezoning from 2004. And I wanted to see if you could address how you believe this site or these sites integrate into that conversation from 18, 19 years ago. How does this fit in? How should the commission look at that?
Yes, you're referring to the Throgs Neck rezoning in 2003, which the community was very engaged with the City Planning Commission, and there was areas of Throgs Neck that were downzoned as part of the rezoning. This particular area along the Bruckner was zoned R4, so it was just contextualized as part of the rezoning. So there was an acknowledgement that this particular area did not need to be further downzoned. But I think most importantly and respectfully for the community, I think there are a number of members of the community that we've engaged with throughout this process that we heard loud and clear. They're very adamant about protecting single family and 2-family zoning. And this project, I think, doesn't trickle into the lower density areas that they are hoping to protect. The proposed R6A is limited in the rezoning area there are 4 block fronts along the Bruckner that we had pointed out as part of the site location slide that are at the crossroads of Bruckner Boulevard and East Tremont, which are major commercial corridors. And they're really on the fringe of the lower density growth management area and appropriate for a modest increase in density. And as we presented, there really is a need for new housing for current residents and also future residents. With such a low production of housing in this area, eventually people will continue to move out of Throgs Neck and there will be no affordable housing or even market rate housing for the population that lives there and for future residents that want to call Throgs Neck home.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity on the contextual area and also the notion that this is on the fringe of the area that was addressed in 2003, 2004. Let me just make sure that I have the numbers correct. The number 529 that you gave me before, that was the total number of units created in District 13. Is that correct?
That's correct. in the
And
past.
of that number of units, how many of them were considered affordable units?
Can I just follow up with you on the housing conference numbers?
You can.
Just
You can.
wanna-
I believe I know the answer to this question. I think the answer is 58. So I just want to make sure that your numbers are in sync with mine, but I believe that that is the correct number. So a low number of housing production and a really low number of affordable housing production is, I think, what we're looking at here. So, okay, let me ask you one other question, because it's another issue that was raised in the neighborhood, and I think it's an important one for us to explore today, and we certainly will explore it with members of the community. Infrastructure capacity. This has come up as an issue, during public review, can you address how you believe this project would or would not affect the various infrastructure related concerns that have been raised, whether it's schools, traffic, sewers, PD, fire, the issues that have been specifically raised. I'd like to give you an opportunity to address them for this, roughly 300 units.
Sure. I think the community's concerns about the infrastructure were heard, and definitely we respect them and are committed to continuing to work with the city on some of the larger issues that were raised, that there is a need for additional police and fire, as well as some of the concerns regarding sewers. I do want to point out that DEP is currently there's a plan for, it's in progress, a $68 million pump station for Throgs Neck. There are infrastructure improvements that are in progress, and also additional ones that will be needed. But I think, given the size of this project, it is 339 units across 4 sites that will be phased over time. And I think in, Site C is proposed to be 100% senior affordable, working with our partners at the city to ensure that these infrastructure concerns can be addressed with this proposal moving forward.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to go to my colleagues here, starting with Commissioner Marin.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions regarding, first of all, I wanted to discuss the lower density growth management area, because my understanding of the lower density growth management area was to address open space, lack of open space and parking as the community grew. So I think that we need to really be on the same page with that, and we'll, check it out with the department, but that is my understanding from the department. On site, I'm sure that you've had an opportunity to take a look at the Borough President's report, and I made some comments on Monday, having not seen much of it, and we kind of pair in our thoughts, and that is that, the corner of Tremont, we understand it is a wide street and it is a higher residential district that allows for the 85 feet, but I would posit that due to meeting the scale of the community adjacent to it, and as well as, the one family homes next to there are 3 and 4 story one family homes that lend themselves well to about a 35-foot height. I happened to go by the neighborhood again last night to confirm these findings that I was looking at. And so I believe that on that corner, building A, an R6B, would fit more in line with what the community is in terms of its urban fabric, and would line up with the school and the 4 to 5 story buildings in that area. On site B, I also have my concerns about the height, specifically since it is directly adjacent to some of the single family homes. And, I'm hearing various arguments that, number one, it's hard to maintain a supermarket, yet you're having 2,000 folks daily. And I'm not too sure how 339 new residents would help to upkeep that supermarket. So that argument is to me questionable. And, you know, I really posit that I think that, again, R6B for that parcel, excuse me, yes, R6B would be the way to go. On parcel C, the senior housing building, I too do find that it might be considered a bit tall next to the adjacent homes. However, this is a purpose-built building for seniors. It is on a wide street adjacent to the highway and would be the only tallest standing structure that is adjacent to those homes. However, because at that point, Bruckner goes down, the height would not be seen as so egregious in comparison to the rest of the buildings. Then my biggest concern would be, you know, we talked about the supermarket employees and relocating the supermarket. Where would the supermarket employees go and come back to during the development time period that this project is being built? So those are some of the questions that I have. I do have others, but I know my team also has other questions. So I will leave it there, and we can get responses and move on to the rest of the commissioners.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Marin. There's a lot of questions there, but I'll try to address each of them. So the first one, I think, you know, just related to the suggestion of the R6B, and, you know, we also heard that in the borough president's report for Site A. I think one of the important things to note is that, you know, our rationale, obviously already stated it, but again, it is at the corner of two wide streets, and an increase in not only to overall support the mixed use development program that we're proposing across all 4 sites, and the community benefits, a certain level of density is needed. The R6B would only allow a 2.2 FAR and would not produce it would significantly reduce the number of housing units, and that's a 2.2 maximum FAR. So with the supermarket, we are replacing the supermarket in the same size that is currently there. Additionally, we need to provide a significant number of parking. I think, you know, your points on the lower density growth management area and its need to protect parking, we've also recognized that this is an area that depends on automobile usage, and the team has actually provided 136 more parking spaces than what is required by the proposed zoning district across all 4 sites. So the supermarket will be replacing all of its parking, all 40 parking spaces. And then also we'll have, it is an additional, for the residential parking, we have an additional 118 parking spaces. And that is in specific response to the community's concerns about the need for parking and automobile use, and the lower density growth management area protections that were originally put in place. And so just getting back to the R6B, a 2.2 FAR with MIH and also replacing the supermarket and providing that level of parking would not, it just would not be able to support this project. And that's why when the development team was doing their underwriting for this project, the R6A was proposed. And, you know, I think some of the concerns about height are well heard. And I think, you know, the development team is looking into proposals, alternate proposals where they can further bring down the height. I do also want to point out that the R6A requires by zoning that within 25 feet of the existing R4 that the building step down to 45 feet. The R6B would not have, does not have that requirement. It is, I understand it is a lower height overall, but it doesn't have the step down requirements that an R6A has in place. So I think, you know, those are just some of the points that we've looked at and studied in looking at alternate districts. So I think hopefully that addresses your first point. You know, Site B, we were able to have the building at 5 stories, which I think is consistent with what the R6B would allow. So, but it also, would generates additional residential density, but also allows for the community facility to be located on the ground floor, which I think is really important to the community. On your other point regarding the supermarket, so the supermarket, I think Peter is the best person to speak to the financials of the supermarket, but I do just want to point out that they have made a commitment. They operate other supermarkets throughout New York City, and a lot of their supermarket employees have been with them since day one, and they intend to keep them at their other locations and to make a commitment to have them come back once the supermarket is rebuilt. But I'll let Peter speak to that as well.
Commissioners, look, the grocery business has been extremely difficult in the past year with COVID and high inflation and margins that are thin. Volume of customers does not equal profitability. So we are just staying alive. We're compensating, paying our bills. But if we don't reinvent ourselves where we can become more energy efficient, become part of the Fresh program, evolve into the next level of where we can hand over this property to our legacy, to our family members that are going to run that market and be there for another 50 or 100 years. We can't just take down a building and go 4 stories or 5 stories. We penciled it out. It just doesn't make sense. That's on advisement from people that are within our group. We're just looking to make an investment for the future. Again, it's all basically, we want to become a green supermarket. We're looking to do leads, which is a big thing, which I've done a lead store before. This will be 100% leads. We're trying to go for gold. And at the end of the day, we can't just invest all this money. The supermarket's infrastructure is dated. We are looking to go with the new energy efficient equipment. And also the building would help subsidize part of the build out where we could feel that we have something that's for us at the end of the day. As far as the employees go, supermarkets are extremely underemployed right now. I have supermarkets, Joe and I both will make sure that every single employee will be placed at if they want to be placed, they will be placed in positions in other supermarkets. And the minute we open up the store, however long the construction project would take, every single employee will be guaranteed their job back. We will do everything that, these are family. These are people that have been with us for 20 years. We keep these people dear to our heart. We are looking to retain these people. And again, at the end of the day, we will place everybody in a position. And when we open up that building with a new supermarket to serve that community in a better manner than it was before, more modern, energy efficient, we will have every single employee come back to us. I believe that's the 2 questions you asked, right? Commissioner?
You're muted, Commissioner. That's okay. Mr. Bavona, let's give him
the commissioner asked me a question. I just want to make sure that I get.
Yes. Good.
Mr. Bavona, yes, I did receive them.
Thank
you. Thank you, sir. I did receive your answers. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bavona. Thank you, Commissioner Maureen. Now I am going to go on to Commissioner Cerullo.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, good morning, everyone. I just, this is more of a reflection than a question, and then I do have a question for the team. I just want to say that I was really thrilled to see the partnership with the Siller Foundation, Tunnels to Towers. Obviously, as a Staten Islander, I have a particular knowledge and awareness of the amazing work that they do, and the contributions the Siller family and the team there have been making to communities all around, even beyond New York. So I can't imagine that relationship won't prove to be very successful, particularly as this process moves through. But I have a substantive question that relates to the EAS, and just to get your sense of this. I read, that the timing of the sort of the traffic data collection was obviously, and I will qualify this question by saying this is going to be an issue for us, meaning the commission and the department, as projects come forward that had sort of some environmental review during a period involving COVID, when the world was not exactly as it was before COVID, and certainly since. But I want to get your sense of how you looked at the data when a lot of the traffic data was collected during the period where typical activity in the neighborhood was not the same as it would have been prior or since. And whether you looked at data that you could find sort of pre the period that you collected the data, and even perhaps post, because in November of 2020, while we certainly were phasing back in to the world we know today, we still were not in a place where typical traffic and activity on the street was occurring. So it's a question with more of a sort of discussion and conversational sense of how you're looking at the data, and if there's any additional data or reflection you have about that we should be considering as we move through this process.
So, no, I think, we appreciate your concern, and I think, we're all kind of adjusting to life post-COVID, and these are concerns that I think the applicant team has as well. As part of the environmental review that was done for the project, these, a detailed analysis was done in conjunction with DOT and DCP, and they did conclude that there was no significant adverse impacts due to traffic analysis. At the end, there's detailed analysis done on each of the intersections, but I think your concerns are well heard, and I think those are points that we can consider as the project moves forward.
And has there been any sort of follow-up, even just for data purposes, to look at, where sort of the traffic data would be today versus where it was in November of 20? And because also there are other conditions in the neighborhood that were not reflected or existing at the time too. So we have COVID and other things. I just wonder, but I appreciate the fact that you appreciate the concern. But I again, while we're talking about this application right now, I think this is going to be an issue for us over time as data collection from the COVID period is being used in other projects around the city, that we're going to be challenged with that issue.
I think that's something we can look into further with our traffic consultant, just to see what the comparisons are with current data, with the data used as part of the analysis done today.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Cerullo. Let me now go to Commissioner Burney.
Thank you. You had attempted to introduce your architect in your presentation, but he wasn't on at the time, and I think he's on now. Is that true?
Yes, I was there, but I got permission late. That's why I missed the first portion. But I was there.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us. And a couple of the questions that had come up in review on Monday had been to do with the floor plans of the buildings, in particular the ground floor, and how the buildings engage the street. And specifically with respect to Site D, I couldn't quite understand how the illustration that you presented for Site D really reflected a 3-story residential building. It didn't seem to quite work out. So we'd just be grateful for any further information on those two questions.
So no, basically, we show the three-story building there, and we consider the direction of the street. That's how we place it, the building where it is, and where the parking it is right now.
So what's happening on the ground floor, and how do the apartments lay out in the building?
Basically, we have apartment on the front of the building, and then we have, I believe we have one or maybe two apartments. It's a small floor plate, and then with two means of figures, it is mainly like two apartments, and I believe we have like a interior recreation area on the first floor.
And do you have a ground floor plan that you could share with us that shows the ground floor?
No, at the moment.
Okay. And how about the other sites? Are there any ground floor plans available for the other sites?
The only ground floor available that we have is for Site A.
It's for Site A. But would it be possible at some time in the future to get us some ground floor plans for information?
Yes.
Okay, that would be grateful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney. Let me now go to Commissioner Rampersad.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. A lot of the questions I had were already asked by the chair and my fellow commissioners. I just had two quick questions. I know Site C is the senior housing. I noticed that the unit breakdown, you have 88 studios. Was there any thought about making it a little bit more towards one bedroom? And the second question I had was with regards to the recreational center that they're looking to have there, has an entity been chosen, or are you looking at an organization to run that program, that facility?
Sure. So your first question related to the senior housing, we had worked with an affordable housing consultant to develop this unit mix based on the overall square footage and the SARA requirements, which is the city's current term sheet for senior affordable housing. And that's how they arrived at the 88 studios. But I think your question about looking into more one bedroom units, I think that's something that we can look into with our team. And then the second question was related to the youth recreation center. And so this came out of comments that we heard from the community, but also the current uses at Site B. It's currently used by you're leasing the space to a youth batting cage organization. And so the goal was to have them be part of it, and also to partner with local organizations that we can work with, the community board, borough president, and the council member to identify the proper organization to run this facility. But right now there is no particular organization on board for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up is Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you. Can you, I think I mentioned at the review session on Monday, can you speak to us about any impact from the expiration of 421A on any of the phases of the projects? That's the first question. And the second question, I believe Mr. Peter mentioned that you were part of the FRESH program. Is that through the IDA, and have you signed an agreement with them for it yet?
Sure. So the first question related to 421A that we heard you raise at the review session on Monday is definitely one that is a concern. We did underwriting for these developments, and Site C has since now, as part of the public review process, has gone 100% affordable. So it's not as concerning for that site because there is the available 420C as a right tax exemption. However, sites A, B, and D were underwritten assuming some kind of 421A tax exemption. We face the same challenges that many other developers face in the city. And, I think in particular, the city in adopting mandatory inclusionary housing assume that the 25% and 30% requirements would pair well with a 421A tax exemption to get a lot of these projects off the ground and running. So, and given that Mayor Adams and hopefully and Governor Hochul, there is some support for a 421A program, we're pretty confident that there will be a tax exemption available for market rate and affordable housing in the future.
But how likely is it for the project to proceed should the 421A continue to be extinct?
So I think, given that these buildings will phase over time, we're hopeful that there will be a tax exemption available for the buildings that are proposed site A and B and D with market rate housing. But I think, it is the reality that a lot of developers are facing right now, and they may have to pivot and consider other options for developing the property if when it gets ready, when they're getting ready to redevelop. A and B currently have operational uses in the building, so I think there is some time for redevelopment, and that's why I was saying it's going to be phased over time. But I think it is a concern.
Thank you. Okay, can you speak to the fresh program that Mr. Bavona mentioned?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the fresh program that Peter was discussing was the tax incentives. That we're not seeking a zoning bonus for the fresh project here.
And have you entered into an agreement with the IDA on that yet?
Not at this time, no.
Have you consulted with them?
Peter, I think you had initial conversations regarding the site for the fresh. Yeah.
I think Peter is muted.
Sorry, Commissioner. The fresh program allows us to basically lower our tax base over the next 20 years or more. It allows us to redevelop the first floor of the supermarket, pay no tax on the equipment that we'd be purchasing. It would guarantee that a supermarket would be there for the next 20 plus years.
Right. I'm familiar with the benefits of the program. I'm just concerned. I would like to ensure that you are part of the fresh program so that the supermarket is guaranteed to be there for at least 20 plus years.
Yes.
Have you filed an application with the IDA yet?
Ackerman is our land use attorney. We've spoken to them, and I believe they're in the process of filing the application. Jackie, is that correct?
Well, I will look into the status of that, and we can get back to you on that.
Thank you, because I think that will ensure the public and certainly the commission that the supermarket will operate for at least because based on.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
I agree with you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. My question was going to the sequencing of construction. Will the two sites, assuming you were to go forward, will they be built simultaneously? Because my question goes to the site which would contain the new supermarket. Would that be completed in the first sequence?
So I think the actual construction timeline has not been set yet. And I think there are some variables that we were just discussing with the 421A. But, I think that is something that we can, I think it's intended that site A would be constructed first. I had a cut on my foot. Okay, Josephine, you have to go. Sorry.
Is that the other lawyer that has something to say? I don't.
Sorry.
Yeah, question. Sure.
Eventually, we'll all be back in person, right?
Well, yeah, I think the sequencing is important. I think Devona might agree that, the community would certainly appreciate the reemergence of the supermarket sooner rather than later.
Advice well taken, Commissioner, 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Let me just, before we move on here, let me just make sure that I understand the current state of play out there on these sites. You said that C and D are currently vacant. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And A and B, just tell us what the precise details are today on A and B.
Sure. Site A is a 16,000 square foot supermarket with 40 at-grade parking spaces. And Site B, it is mostly vacant. There is a batting cage on the ground floor, and there are vacant residential apartments above.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I do not see further questions from the commission. So I will thank you all for your testimony today and for your presentation. And we're going to move on to members of the public. And the first member of the public, we're very pleased, as always, to be joined by our elected officials. And the first elected official up today is Assembly Member Michael Benedetto of the 82nd Assembly District. Assemblyman, welcome. And as soon as you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Garodnick and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for affording me the brief opportunity to say a couple words. You know, there used to be a bank in New York. Bank's not there any longer, as happens with banks, but Chemical Bank. And they would advertise about New York, and their advertisement would say, New York is made up of neighborhoods, and each neighborhood has a chemical reaction. Well, there's a chemical feeling for all these neighborhoods, and Frogs Neck and the Country Club, Spencer Estate, Pelham Bay area is no different. A feeling happens in this area, which is different than many other areas in the city of New York. Some people like the excitement of New York City. Some people like the busyness of and the 24 action that takes place, where everybody is there and moving about. People have their choice where they want to live, and people have moved into this area, the area of Throgs Neck in particular, because of its own chemical reaction. A quiet feeling, a less hassle type of feeling in this area, because they wanted this feeling. They wanted to bring their families here and raise their children here, and without the hustle and bustle that you have in other parts, and the congestion that you have in the other parts of the city. And to that end, they spoke out some 17, 18 years ago when they had a proposal before them about redistricting this area, and hearings were held, and the area was downzoned, okay, because there was a reason to preserve an area like this, an area of a little peace and a little tranquility in this wild city that we have. The people of Throgs Neck, which I've been lucky enough to represent for the last 18 years, want that feeling to continue. Okay, they voted for it, the downzoning 18 years ago. They want to maintain it now. and they are very much afraid. And I agree with them because I've lived in this area all my life. That this upzoning would definitely change the feel of Frog's Neck, the chemical reaction, so to speak. And they are pleading for you to look favorably upon their opposition to this upzoning plan and for the preservation of the life that they chose to live in this great city of New York. Gentlemen, I thank you for your time and for listening to me. And with that, I will head up to Albany. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Assemblyman. We appreciate your being here with us. Thank you. Okay, we now have several members of the public who are wishing to testify on this item. We ordinarily will go a handful against and then a handful in favor, and that is what we will do today. I believe that the borough president will be joining us at some point, so I will call her when she gets here. Okay, so first up is Mary Jane Musano, and she will be followed by Frank Vernuccio. Ms. Musano, as soon as you are ready, you can go ahead and you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I am opposed to the Bruckner upzoning, and so are the 10,322 residents that signed the petition that was submitted to you. We are opposed for good reason. All of the same reasons you agreed with in 2004 when you approved our downzoning. Nothing has improved. We are now more overdeveloped and more underserved. Our infrastructure is failing. We have been told that our services and infrastructure would be improved since 2004 when we downzoned. It hasn't happened in 18 years. It would be irresponsible to approve this project and add to the problem that you already know exists. The EAS, as one of your commissioners cited, was done in November 2020 at the height of the pandemic, but it was, we believe, to be an inaccurate document. The city was in lockdown, so of course there was no traffic on the streets. That's not the current situation, and it's not the normal situation here. Bruckner Boulevard is not a wide street. It is a one-way, one-lane street that is clogged with the runoff from I-95 and the Cross Bronx Expressway almost every day. There was no mention of the distribution center on Bruckner Boulevard, just a block away from the proposal site. This is the largest distribution center in the United States, and it will certainly have a very negative effect on the already congested Bruckner Boulevard. Site A is adjacent to PS 14, which is on Crosby Avenue. At a drop-off time and pickup time, the street is so clogged with traffic that at times we have had emergency vehicles halted there, which is a life-threatening situation. Adding an 8-story building to that mix will cause a disaster to occur. There are E-designated properties in the proposal, but no one has mentioned that, and I think we deserve an explanation. We do more than our part in this community. You gave us the downzoning so that we could offer a slice of suburbia to all that choose to live here, and they are coming in droves to join us. Low density means more environmentally friendly. Rent is more affordable in a 2-family home than it is in a big building that is especially not owner occupied. Research shows that a community stays more stable in owner occupied communities. I also want to add that in our downzones community, the height limit is 35 feet. It's 30 feet across frontage. No attached homes are allowed in the downzoning. So it would, this project would, of 34 properties, by the way, not 4, 34 are being upzoned, would dwarf our community. You agreed that we should have a choice. I'm sorry. You agreed that in New York City, we should have a choice. Please keep your word and let us keep our zoning. We ask you please to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Misano. Next up is Frank Berniccio, followed by Patrick McManus. Mr. Berniccio, if you, there you go. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Frank Vernuccio, and I represent the Throgs Neck Business Improvement District. The Throgs Neck Business Improvement District is in complete opposition to the upzoning proposal threatening our community. There are several reasons for this. As evidenced by last year's devastating flooding following Hurricane Ida, our local drainage infrastructure is already inadequate. Adding to this massive and out-of-scale development would result in rapid and severe danger to the homes and existing businesses of our area. The traffic in this neighborhood is already severe. Adding the significant number of people in the current proposal would render that issue even more troubling, causing a dramatic deterioration to the local quality of life. We remind all that there is no subway service to this area, and bus service is already inadequate. Indeed, some bus stops are being eliminated. One of the most significant challenges to the business community throughout the Throgs Neck bid area is parking. The proposed upzoning does not even remotely provide adequate parking for the influx of people it calls for. This would seriously harm both residents and enterprises in the area. The Throgs Neck bid, Community Board 10, and the overwhelming majority of local residents oppose this proposal. The ruinous impact is clear. In prior hearings on this topic, particularly at Community Board 10, the overwhelming majority of those speaking on behalf of this project neither live, work, do business, or own property in the area affected. It is difficult to imagine any justification to allow it to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berniccio. You know, just one observation that I want to make, because I suspect we're going to be having this conversation throughout the morning, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. The population of Bronx Community Board 10 has grown from 2010 to 2020. It grew by about 10,000 people. And as we heard before, there have been very few homes added in the neighborhood. So one question for you is, when you think about infrastructure, shouldn't housing be part of that infrastructure concern? Why is that not on the list here of things that are a point of concern for the bid or for the community?
Before one can even talk about that portion of the infrastructure, you have to talk about the basics of city living, or living in any area. During Hurricane Ida, just last September 1st, numerous businesses and individual homes were flooded out. There is no discussion whatsoever to improve the drainage in this area, to improve the water sewer system. That's a disaster. Adding a development of this scale would absolutely make this area unlivable in the next hurricane. We talk a lot about climate change. We know how heavy the rains have been. We know how devastating Ida was, even more devastating to this community than Hurricane Sandy a decade or so ago. Can one imagine the impact of all this additional development in the next hurricane? We would be, as a community, literally wiped out. Numerous individual homeowners had damages between $40,000 and $100,000 to flooded homes and basements. Adding something like this will make that danger even more pronounced.
Is there a is the bid calling for a moratorium on all developments in the area as it relates to this concern, or is it specific to these developments that are being proposed here?
No, it's only restricted to developments that are out of scale with the existing character. And this, of course, clearly is dramatically out of scale to the existing character of the community. Additionally, one of the problems we have just representing the businesses in this area is the devastating impact of lack of parking. It's one of the reasons why our enterprises are so challenged. Adding something of this scale with inadequate parking is going to add to that problem altogether.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vernuccio. Let me see if there are other questions. There are none. We appreciate your being with us today. Let me call next on Patrick McManus, to be followed by Joseph Vaini.
Yes, hello.
Yes, is that you, Mr. McManus?
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. Trouble unmuting.
That's okay.
Okay, what I'd like to say is, as the city planning commissioner, you are stewards of the future of New York City. Now, New York City is such a great place, not only due to the vast diversity of people here, but to the vast diversity of neighborhoods as well. I'm sure, as you know, Throgs Neck is one of only 2 low-density growth areas in the entire city of New York. These areas are worth preserving. The developer is pointing to their project being just on the periphery of this area. Well, I say, once you build on that periphery, you've now moved the periphery further in, and you risk losing the entire area. And for that reason, I ask that you seriously consider before allowing this project to go on. I think you have a duty to preserve this diversity within our city. Secondly, I want to address Mr. Peter Bavona's statements of financial distress, as I believe one of the other commissioners had pointed out. When this project was started, Peter's brother Joseph was the primary. Well, shortly before they started crying financial woes, the primary on this was switched to Peter. I feel this may be due to the fact that Joseph just completed construction of a $2 million home for himself, and it would make it very difficult for him to cry poverty while living in his brand new $2 million home, whereas his brother Peter has just filed bankruptcy, which would aid in their claims. I find this financial issue totally irrelevant. This is 100% a for-profit project, and they are trying to paint it as veterans and senior housing, and in no way is it focused at that. It is 100% in the interest of them profiting. I did have another issue. I can't recall it at the moment, so I guess I will leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Okay, I am going to pause for a moment and welcome the Bronx Borough President, who's joined us today, Vanessa Gibson. We are very honored and pleased to have you with us. And I would like to turn the floor to you, Madam Borough President, as soon as you're ready, before we continue on with our hearing today.
One second.
Just unmute. There you go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair Dan Garodnick, and to all the members of the City Planning Commission. Good afternoon to each and every one of you and to everyone who has testified. I am grateful to be here with all of you today to speak on the proposed Bruckner site rezoning. I am Bronx Borough President Vanessa L. Gibson, and I began this new position on January 1st as the 14th Bronx Borough President. I am thankful for the opportunity to testify before the City Planning Commission this afternoon on such a very important topic. What does affordable housing look like for the City of New York, and how can we ensure that every neighborhood across our great city does its fair share in a strategic and responsible and balanced way? This is a project that I have given a lot of time, labor, effort, thoughts, deliberations to see what type of project was being proposed for our borough of the Bronx, and certainly the impact that this project will have for the city of New York. I want everyone to understand that while this is one project for the Throgs Neck and Schuylerville community, it will have an impact for the entire borough of the Bronx. And that is why I care so deeply about this proposal and hearing all of the concerns of every stakeholder, every resident, every homeowner, and every advocate as it relates to this project. We were able to hold 2 public hearings on this issue, one in person and one virtually, to ensure that the meetings were accessible to as many residents in the community as possible. And after a lot of discussion, a lot of deliberation, it was clear that approving this application with conditions is important for the future of the Bronx. While I considered this application, I am very mindful that we are in a housing crisis in the city of New York. What is urgently needed across the Bronx and the city is real affordable housing. Affordable housing does not mean more crime, but it means stability for families with children, with elders, to make sure that they have stable housing that every New Yorker truly deserves. This project has started a real discussion on many communities that have historically had relatively little affordable housing, and I recognize that this includes the communities of Throgs Neck and Schuylerville as well. One of the reasons is due to the current zoning that does not allow for density needed to really provide affordable housing. The applicant and the team is proposing a development that would include permanent affordable housing dedicated to seniors, older New Yorkers, as well as affordable housing for veterans who have given their lives to serve this great country. When I consider the merits of this project, very important for me that a project works not just for future residents of tomorrow, but it also needs to work for the current residents of today. This housing would be prioritized to existing local residents and would keep seniors and families that are currently within the community together and simply avoid displacement. The context of this neighborhood is also that this project is on the fringe of the larger community as it is split by Bruckner and Tremont and a main commercial corridor. You've heard a lot about congestion, about pollution, about noise, about flooding, about real infrastructure issues that I will get to very shortly. This proposal would not be within the middle of a single family area, and a 5-story scale of development is appropriate in considering the larger benefits of this project. I'll add that any future proposals would need to go through a public review process and would be held to the same criteria as this one, but that the benefits of this project far outweigh the liabilities. As a part of my recommendation, which commissioners you have before you, I believe that Site A should change the zoning from an R6A to an R6B, which would lower the maximum height to 55 feet, which would be more in line and parallel with the existing community today, including our local PS 14, which is across the street. In addition to affordable housing, this project will bring in a number of permanent and temporary, good paying, solid, stable jobs. The pathway to prosperity is through good paying jobs. And the developer of this existing supermarket has committed to preserving the 85 staff by placing them in other stores until the current supermarket can be reopened. They've also committed to union jobs, building a youth and recreation center for our young people so that they have a place for recreation. Recreation is truly needed, and a tutoring center to advance our educational options. Whenever a project team comes to show me their proposal in my office, every opportunity I get, I ask for large apartments, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartments, beyond the minimum HPD minimum requirements, because it's important that housing is built to maximize the opportunities for all families. I believe in quality over quantity. It makes a difference. I'm trying to change the narrative in the Bronx, and I'm pleased that this project does require over 30% of the units are dedicated to at least 2-bedroom unit apartments. That is a good thing. While not directly in the scope of this proposal, but it's very relevant to what you have heard this morning and what you will continue to hear. Infrastructure is important. I need the city, HPD, to look at changing the size requirements of many of our apartments so that we can have families that are stable rather than being forced to move when their families are growing. This allows families to be stable, to put down their roots in our neighborhoods, and we build stronger communities at the same time. Another recommendation that I also have is for the city. I've heard a lot of residents talk about the infrastructure, and my recommendation is to ask Mayor Eric Adams, our chair, Dan Garodnick, and other agencies like DOB and DOT to please help us with dedicating resources to fixing the local infrastructure problems in this community to ensure that the new development can be built, but still provide services that would allow these buildings to be built while not adding additional problems to the infrastructure. So I am asking the mayor to form a multi-agency task force that will work with our community boards, stakeholders, community organizations, elected officials, where we focus on a real neighborhood plan. We have to stay ready so we don't have to get ready. We need to fix the existing infrastructure so that floods don't happen when it rains. When we have different hurricanes and other inclement weather, families have floods of water in their basement. We don't want that to continue to happen. Traffic backs up. We've heard about Crosby Avenue and East Tremont. We've heard the stories during school dismissal. We need DOT to come in and fix the streets. We need more street resurfacing. All of these problems existed well before this proposal was on the table. But now that the proposal is on the table, here is an opportunity for us to do better and show the residents of Schuylerville and Throgsneck that we care and we hear them on their concerns. One final recommendation I have, and I feel very passionate about, and you've also heard consistently from many of our residents in these communities, home ownership opportunities. It is the greatest pathway to prosperity and to the middle class. Many residents in Throgsneck and Schuylerville today used to live in other parts of the Bronx, and they were able to get in to purchase their homes and build their families. Every New Yorker, every Bronxite should have the same opportunities as many others have had. Working class people means a pathway to prosperity. So I would like this administration to focus heavily on home ownership, to stabilize our neighborhoods, to build generational wealth, to create the pathway to middle classes, as well as the pathway to economic prosperity. I also want to further state that this recommendation is in no way precedent setting, and any future applicants to our office will be held to the same standard and the same scrutiny as this one. There are many, many reasons this project has my general support. I cannot turn my back on older adults and seniors, my grandparents that need stable housing. I cannot turn my back on veterans. My uncle is a Vietnam War veteran and served this country, and like many veterans, struggles with PTSD, struggles with returning to the workforce, struggles with affordable housing. The homeless veterans in this city is unacceptable, and we must do better by our veterans. We can't acknowledge them and recognize them on Veterans Day and then treat them like dirt on other days. That is not acceptable for me nor my administration. I do want to recognize the congestion that many have talked about in our open parks and playgrounds, in our schools, and traffic infrastructure improvements, which are very important. I think it's important that we're creating a youth recreation center, because we always talk about young people being a part of negative activity, but guess what? Recreation centers are the pathway to their safety as well as their recreation. I also impose all of you on the jobs, 126 permanent local jobs, 350 temporary construction jobs, while ensuring that the existing grocery store would be able to be rebuilt and remain in the community. So I've weighed a lot of pros and cons, many concerns, much testimony over the 2 days, but all the correspondence that our office has received. It has been consistent, and I do appreciate everyone for coming out. At the end of the day, we may not all agree, but the one thing that we do agree on is we want the Bronx to be better. There are many people that are on the pathway to prosperity and they need support. The thousands of residents every day that go home to a temporary shelter, to temporary housing, we have got to do better by them in this city. It is my hope that this project can be an example. Again, not perfect, but I think it gets us a step forward. It takes a giant step of progress because every neighborhood should do its fair share. And I don't think any community should be exempt from that. Many projects we're seeing in the Bronx, we're getting hundreds and hundreds of units of housing and schools and recreation and youth center. And that is really a catalyst for what we want the Bronx to look like. I do think that this current proposal is very drastic for 1 and 2 and 3 family homeowners that are going to an 8-story building. And that's why we made the recommendations in which we did. So I thank you so much, Mr. Chair, to all the members of the City Planning Commission. And most importantly, I look forward to working with you and your team and the greater borough of the Bronx and our great city of New York. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam President. If we can just pose 1 or 2 questions, I appreciate your incredibly thoughtful, as always, incredibly thoughtful analysis and expression of the issues here. One of the points that that came up earlier was the fact that this community district, this city council district, has only seen 59 units of affordable housing in the last 7 years, from 2014 to 2021, 59 units, which obviously is a concern, particularly in a community board where we have seen an increase of population in roughly the same period by about 10,000 people. So and a total number of units of 500 and change total. So this is there's a crunch here, and to the point about infrastructure concerns, as you correctly point out, housing has to be considered part of the infrastructure concern for this community and also for the city. But what I wanted to ask you was, some of the folks who came before you noted, the chemical feeling of Throgs Neck, a fear that these developments will change the feeling of the neighborhood, the risk of precedent, the fear of what these developments will do. You obviously have given careful consideration. You made very specific recommendations as to the proposals. Tell us why you don't think that is as much of a concern perhaps than what some of the other folks have said before.
Thank you, Chair. So I think, the reason why we recommended a yes with conditions is because we agree that Site A and the scale of an 8-story building is too much. We believe that that is drastic and not modest, as the applicant has mentioned consistently. And what we recommended, the R6B, is to bring that down to a 5-story building, which would be at the same scale as the neighboring PS14 school. We believe that our recommendations create a balance. It recognizes that communities like Throgs Neck and Schuylerville can and should absorb some level of affordable and mixed-use housing, but not at the level that's been proposed. And so we're not saying no, but we're not saying yes to what has been proposed. There is a balance. We also believe that the idea of 100% affordable housing for seniors is a great investment, and we don't believe that that will have an impact on traffic, as most older adults do not own a car, and they're single, living by themselves in studio and 1-bedroom apartments. So we didn't believe that it would have an impact on the local infrastructure, albeit the schools, the parks, and the playgrounds. I do think that the residents have expressed a number of legitimate concerns around infrastructure. And what often is the case, as you know, and your commissioners know, we don't have conversations on infrastructure before we have proposals on the table. And so many residents have consistently complained years after years, after Sandy, after Maria, after Ida, after all of these tropical storms, about the several feet of water in their basements. What is DEP doing? What is DOT going to do? what is DOB and HPD and all of the other agencies who have oversight over our infrastructure. And so I think that is a critical point, and that's why we are raising the idea of this multi-agency task force. We don't believe that we should say no until that's done, but we believe we can say yes with conditions and have that work simultaneously, because not only does that address the current residents of today, but dealing with infrastructure can also address the issues that we anticipate in the future and help support the future residents of the community. So we don't think that this is a drastic proposal of what we are recommending. We think the lower scale is something that's much more modest and that can also be a part of the character of a low density community.
Thank you, Madam President. So we've got your recommendation for R6A to R6B
Yes.
On site A. We understand very clearly your concerns about infrastructure, and frankly, and I have had this experience as you have too in our past histories in government. Taking a moment as a catalyst to make real change in a community, which is what I hear you saying here, and I think that is an important point. Okay, I really appreciate it. We have a couple more questions, perhaps. Oh, maybe I don't. Yes, Commissioner Marine.
Okay.
Thank you. Madam Borough President, I just want to thank you for your presence. I also want to support a statement that you made because it is critical for people to understand your commitment. I know that when we had the Jerome Edward L. Grant Highway rezoning, the biggest question there was infrastructure and some of the support mechanisms like schools that the community would definitely need as a result of the upzoning in that community. And your commitments as councilwoman were kept, and the infrastructure improvements, the studies, the schools, they're all being delivered now. And that's something that's very much appreciated. So I state that because in this rezoning, you're also mentioning the importance of the infrastructure, which you have committed to address, and I know you will. And I want to assure this community that having experience working with you, I know that you will keep to that commitment and they will come to fruition. So I just wanted to thank you for that this morning, for stressing that very important point.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. That rezoning was really a test of my commitment as a council member. It wasn't easy. It was a 3-year journey. And we were able to get over $200 million of capital investments, 2 brand new schools in District 9 and District 10, $50 million in DOT infrastructure, $60 million in park improvements, because we understood from the residents, just like in Throgs Neck and Schuylerville, they kept saying, Ms. Gibson, our schools are overcrowded in District 9, our parks are overflowing. What are you going to do about that now before we welcome new people in? And that's a real challenge that I think the administration has to acknowledge. And we can acknowledge that, we can commit to it. I'd like to see our dollars invested, homeownership opportunities, many CBOs that right now work with many first-time home buyer programs to stimulate homeownership opportunities. We need to see that because many parts of our borough are very dense. We have 10 and 20 and 25-story buildings, and we have very little home ownership in other parts of the Bronx. Why not look at Throgs Neck and Schuylerville as examples on how we can create more ownership opportunities, initiatives like CLTs, community land trust, which I'm super supportive of, worker cooperatives. We should be looking at that all across the Bronx. It shouldn't be married to one neighborhood. And so I understand the concern, and my job as borough president is to look at the entire borough and see where we can make responsible strategic decisions, working in concert with the elected officials and all of the stakeholders that really care, raise their families in these communities, and at the end of the day, just want safe neighborhoods, clean streets, garbage picked up, good schools, great healthcare. That's what we all want, no matter where we live and no matter how we pay our rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. With that, I'm going to, again, thank you for your presence here today. We're going to move on with the rest of the hearing, but as always, we really appreciate you and your thoughtful recommendations. We'll look forward to speaking with you further. Have a great
so much.
Thank
Have a blessed one. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Joseph Baini and John Serini. Mr. Baini, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Mr. Vanini, you should be able to unmute your microphone. There you go.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
We can.
Okay, hi. A lot of people have already spoken about the infrastructure problems that we have, probably way more articulately than I can. I'm hardly the most eloquent of speakers. But here's one thing I do want to bring up. You mentioned yourself, Chairman Garanik, that at least 10,000 people have settled in Throgs Neck over the last 10 years or so. Am I correct? That it was more or less the figures you gave. I think it's actually higher than that if we had more up-to-date figures. And you mentioned 529 units of affordable housing. And those figures probably may be correct, but what do we classify as affordable housing? Obviously, the people who have moved in here managed to move in somewhere. They're not living under a tree. There is a huge amount of development that does take place within Throgs Neck and the surrounding areas. That development may not fall into whatever your definition of affordable housing is, but obviously it's affordable to somebody. So let's take a look at the definition of affordable housing here. Okay, the definition of affordable housing as it refers to this project is basically mandatory inclusionary housing, option 2. Now, what is that pegged to? That's pegged to 80% of the area median income. So what does that mean? That means anybody who can't afford to live here now, hypothetically, probably won't be able to afford these affordable apartments. So this is not really a panacea for any affordable housing crisis that we have in New York City. MIH, as many of you know, has been criticized, to a tremendous degree. So here's what I'm saying. We have here, okay, basically the perception that forced densification is the only solution to an affordable housing crisis. That takes away all diversity of environment in New York, all of it. Many of our younger residents, they've come here specifically to leave denser neighborhoods because they wanted to live in a quieter area. Many of them have invested their life savings to buy a house here. This doesn't affect me so much. This doesn't affect some of the other people that may speak so much. We're older. We can walk out. We're not the ones, still holding a mortgage. The younger residents are. Now, for all these zoning protections to be upended, okay, there should be a critical reason, an overwhelming solution. I don't see that here. I see a couple of scattered developers that own land, many of which have done nothing with that land for years. I mean, sites C and D have been basically an eyesore for decades. They've done nothing with it. Site B, the Zuccarellas, I believe, have actually turned down potential tenants waiting for an opportunity like this. And as far as the financial woes of Site A, who the hell knows? These guys change their story every week. One week they're the Bronx Elon, and any opposition is, doomed to failure.
Thank you.
They're crying they can't.
Thank you. Okay, I think they may have muted you. I'm sorry. You hit your 3 minutes, but we appreciate your being here. Let me just make one correction on the numbers. The number of affordable units in the council district at issue here was 58 total units from 2014 to 2021. So I just wanted to correct that. Okay, next up is John Serini, to be followed by Larry Wilson. Do we have Mr. Serini?
Yes, Mr. Serini, you should be able to unmute your microphone. Okay. We're not, he might have stepped away or having technical difficulties.
Okay, well, we can certainly come back to him when he is back with us. Let's go next to Larry Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson. Ready to go. There you go. Mr. Wilson having some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there we go.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. And I'm here today.
Uh-oh, Ryan, I think we should,
yeah.
And Mr. Wilson, I'm very sorry. You're coming in a garbled fashion. So we cannot make sense of your words. So I think we should hold for a moment. Maybe we can bring you back if there's a way for you to get to a more reliable connection, because we cannot understand what you're saying.
Yeah, we can try.
Ryan, do you think you can work with Mr. Wilson to get a better connection while we move on?
Sure, we can try and give him maybe dial him in. And
okay, that's great. Let's go to Ankur Dalal, and then we can see if we can revisit Mr. Wilson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Ankur Dalal, and I'm here to testify in favor of the Bruckner rezoning. I support this project because it will provide hundreds of new homes, including nearly 100 below market rate homes that will include apartments set aside for seniors and veterans. I think every neighborhood must do its part to build more housing, and I believe that Bronx CB10 has not. In a 2020 report, the Citizens Budget Commission noted that Bronx CB10 was in the bottom 10 of city community districts in terms of housing units approved in the past decade. As the applicant noted, one of the reasons for this was because of the 2003 downzoning, which reduced the possibility of new homes in the area. Whatever the merits of this downzoning in 2003 were, be it open space or parking, the city is a radically different place today. Rents are skyrocketing across the city because we do not have enough housing available to satisfy the current demand. People in non-regulated homes across the city are facing rent increases of 20, 30, or 40% or more. And it's not just civic organizations that are noting how CB10 isn't producing enough housing. The borough president noticed this as well. She just testified to us, and she wrote in her report providing conditional approval of this project that she's mindful that what is so urgently needed across our great borough and city is affordable housing, and that every community needs to take on some of the responsibility to achieve this cause. This project has started a discussion on communities that have relatively little affordable housing, and I recognize that this includes Throgsneck. One of the reasons is due to the current zoning not allowing for the density needed to provide affordable housing. This project provides a chance to correct this wrong. This project will produce substantial new housing, particularly if it is approved without conditions, and the project will be located next to an express bus stop, which I think will help residents reduce trips by taking the bus instead of a car. I do think it is important to approve without condition. And to respectfully push back a little bit on some of Commissioner Marin's questions about whether multi-story housing, the height might be egregious, or whether hundreds of new people can help a grocery store. To me, emphasizing these issues rather than how to maximize the number of homes we can create during a housing crisis is not planning for the future of a growing city, but instead planning to placate or enrich incumbent homeowners and landlords whose homes become more valuable if supplies remain limited. I think that's wrong. As the applicant noted, everyone will benefit from a new state-of-the-art energy efficient supermarket. New supermarkets are nice, and it's a good thing if we can create new customers for our struggling business. To close, I just want to note something else that the borough president said in favor of this project. This project can be a model for what comprehensive neighborhoods could look like. A neighborhood that can allow families to have different housing options, from apartments to home ownership to senior housing, while community services are provided through youth recreation centers and grocery stores, all while creating great jobs. Please support this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dalal, for your testimony. Let me see if, Ryan, if we were able to get a better connection with Mr. Wilson. And if not, we'll move on for the moment.
Looks like we have Mr. Wilson on. Yes, can we?
Great.
Can you speak now, Mr. Wilson?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay, I'm going to start over. Good morning, Chairman Garodnick and members of the commission. My name is Larry Wilson, and I'm here today on behalf of the union and our 85,000 property service workers in New York City to express our support for the proposed Bruckner site project. I am a native New Yorker born and raised in the Bronx. I am also a commercial work member of 32BJ. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in the communities where they build. Over the last few decades, our community has seen immense growth and opportunities, but the need for affordable housing has not been met. A project like this means that the next generation will not have to leave the city to find affordable housing or jobs. I am happy to report that the developers affiliated with Droznek Associate LLC have reached out early and made a credible commitment to creating prevailing wage building service jobs at this site. We estimate that a mixed-use development like this one proposed by the developers will be permanently staffed by an estimated 12 to 14 builder service workers and will also have approximately 339 new units, of which 94 of those units will be affordable housing in accordance with the mandatory inclusionary housing program. These jobs are typically filled by local members of the community, and because of this commitment, will pay families sustaining wages, which help bring working families into middle class. These apartments are needed for working people in the Bronx. This commitment to good prevailing wage jobs will give opportunity for upward mobility, security, and dignity to working class families. For these reasons, we are in full support of this project. We have full confidence that Droznek Associates LLC will be a responsible employer and presence in the community. For these reasons, we respectfully urge you to approve this rezoning. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much for being here and for your testimony. Let's go next to Michael Case. I'm very sorry if I'm doing that. Cass. Thank you. Sorry about that, Mr. Cass. Welcome, and whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Michael Cass. I'm a resident of Council District 13, and I support the Bruckner Sites rezoning. At the review session, Chair Garodnick asked the right question. Is this a neighborhood building its fair share of affordable housing? And the answer is no. I think you all understand why this is a good project and why this is needed. Simply put, we have a housing crisis and all neighborhoods need to build housing. I wanted to thank Borough President Gibson for issuing a conditional favorable recommendation on this rezoning. Amazing speech. However, regarding the conditions, I think we should try to keep as much density as we can so we can keep as many homes as possible. We all know the zoning needs to change. 22 homes for veterans, impossible as of right. Up to 99 affordable units, impossible as of right. Brand new supermarket, not viable as of right. None of it happens without a modest increase in density. I read the City Planning Commission report on the 2004 Droznek rezoning, and I believe the rationale behind it does not hold up in respect to the Bruckner sites. For example, attached homes were banned under the rationale that they were walling off the waterfront. There are no waterfront views to protect at the Bruckner sites. The report noted the various transportation options, but because of higher than average car ownership, use that as a rationale for lower densities and higher parking requirements. This is backwards and encourages more car use. With the Bruckner sites rezoning, we have the opportunity to take advantage of all the bus lines that cross there. It's a natural place to increase density, to discourage car usage. Need to go grocery shopping? It's literally downstairs. Now, you may hear concerns about infrastructure and services. I must note, the folks opposing this rezoning on the pretext of school capacity also opposed the PS14 expansion just a few years ago, arguing in the Bronx Times that because of their 1 and 2 family zoning, that they would, quote, never be able to fill all of those seats, unquote. Now that there's a proposal to legalize apartments nearby, the expanded school is suddenly too full for them, despite dropping attendance. I can only describe it as cynical. Opponents may point to the sewer system being overrun by this rezoning. Opponents of the Gowanus rezoning made a similar argument in their now dismissed lawsuit, arguing it would increase CSO volumes. However, studies found, and the court agreed, that the rezoning would actually decrease CSO volumes due to new developments meeting the unified stormwater rule. I believe we'd find something similar with the Bruckner rezoning, where redeveloped buildings can potentially reduce storm runoff into the sewer. Of course, we should still invest in our services and infrastructure, but we shouldn't let bad faith claims stop what we need, whether it's the school expansion at PS 14, a road dine on Tremont Avenue, or housing on Bruckner Boulevard. I urge the Commission to support the Bruckner rezoning at the full proposed density. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cass. We appreciate your being here and your testimony and your observations. So thank you for that. Let me call next on Jesse Lang, to be followed by Josh Goodman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. Just took me a moment to rejoin as a panelist, but thank you for having me. My name is Jessie Lang, and I am speaking today in support of the Bruckner Boulevard rezoning. Within City Council District 13, as we have noted, only 58 affordable units have been built since 2014, and this puts it at the bottom 5 of all City Council districts across all 5 boroughs for affordable housing production. In the neighborhood of Throgs Neck, only about 30 housing units of any type have been built since 2014. Housing production in the area sharply dropped after the 1960s and again after the aughts, despite the fact that the area and our city has a growing population of residents that need homes. As we know, this rezoning alone would bring in nearly 100 permanently affordable units to the area and about 300 homes for families who need them. There is a clear and urgent need for more housing of all types here. I want to see New York meet the housing needs of its residents, and that needs to start with ensuring that wealthier neighborhoods that have historically resisted development allow new mixed income housing to cut down on residential segregation and start to play a role in the solutions to the housing crisis. You know, I was so happy to see that Borough President Gibson issued a conditional approval for the rezoning. I wish that it was a full approval without conditions, but happy to see that she approved it nonetheless and saw the merits of it. It is clear that she recognized the need for more housing in this area and that she was pragmatic and solutions oriented about how infrastructure upgrades could happen in response to concerns that some residents voiced. I was also very pleased that the applicants have made adjustments to the proposal to add more senior and affordable housing and change the mix of housing units to accommodate more families. This is really the benefit of the ULURP process, which is that people get a say in how these developments pan out. I hope that the City Planning Commission and later the City Council agree that the applicants are engaging with this process in good faith. Ultimately, we need more housing everywhere, so I am asking that the CPC say yes to this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lang. We appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. Next up is Josh Goodman, to be followed by George Havranek.
Hi, sorry, am I up?
Yes, you're on.
Excellent, thank you. So hi, everyone. My name is Josh Goodman. I'd like to speak in favor of this project. Up front, I would like to acknowledge that I do not live in the area directly affected. I'm a resident of Washington Heights and Upper Manhattan. But I think it's really important to recognize in a setting like this that the voices of people who might benefit either directly or indirectly from a future project are systematically downweighted. Future residents of a proposed project can't speak on behalf of the project because they don't yet know they'll live there. And the highly interconnected nature of housing across New York City and throughout the region means that what happens in one neighborhood ultimately affects everyone. A subset of current residents of the area might oppose a project and make a lot of noise about it, but far more people are ultimately affected by the decision than just them. And additionally, in this case, I think that much of that opposition is ultimately misguided. As we all know very well at this point, New York City is at a crisis point when it comes to housing availability and cost. The rate at which housing is produced has been far outstripped by population gains and job growth for multiple decades, and the result is skyrocketing rents. And the lack of housing production in this area in particular has been much discussed on this call. There's been a discussion of the idea that if people want to live in denser neighborhoods, they can choose to live there instead of a place like Throgs Neck. But due to the incredibly high cost of housing in so many neighborhoods, that's increasingly not the case. Additionally, we know that residents of urban neighborhoods have much smaller carbon footprints than people who live in suburban single-family housing. So if an apartment building isn't built here, the people that might have lived there don't magically disappear. Instead, they're likely to live in areas with far less access to transit, like an express bus, with higher energy requirements for heating and cooling as opposed to a LEED certified building, as is the case here. We as a city can't claim to be serious about combating climate change if we don't allow people to live in areas where they can live energy efficient lives. Additionally, I'd like to note that much has been said in the past week about how New York will act as a safeguard for reproductive rights given the Supreme Court's recent ruling in Dobbs. But if people can't actually afford to live here and are instead forced to move to lower cost areas in states like Texas or Florida, that rhetoric rings somewhat hollow. And with all that being said, I think this project in particular is a very good one. It would not be displacing any current residents. Instead, it's being led by a local business and would prioritize current residents who are themselves at risk of being displaced by rising housing costs. It would contain both income restricted and market rate homes, both of which are badly needed to address the lack of housing in the city and the high rate of rent burdened households. It's located next to an express bus stop that would allow easy access to jobs and recreation in Manhattan. While yes, some of the proposed buildings are taller than what's present in the area currently, it's restricted to a very small area along a major corridor. And higher density in appropriate areas is not inherently a bad thing. On the contrary, bringing more residents into the area will provide more patrons at local businesses and introduce more life on the street. While certain opponents of this project have used coded language implying that it would somehow bring increased crime, those of you who are familiar with the work of Jane Jacobs know the importance of having more eyes on the street in a neighborhood to build strong local networks and prevent crime, which these new residents of these apartments would provide. So ultimately, this kind of mixed income housing is exactly what we need in order to reduce the extreme socioeconomic and racial segregation that plagues our city. The fact there are so many apartments set aside for local low-income seniors and disabled veterans is the cherry on top. I strongly urge you to support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony and your time. We appreciate it. Let me go next to, let's see, I had called George Havranek to be followed by Maria Diaz.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate the time. One thing I want to address is the New York City housing crisis. We have to admit, this is in part manufactured by bad New York City policies, a sort of mismanagement. New York City is behaving like bad parents that take on more responsibility that they can handle. All right, the developers in this particular case held on to their properties like bad penny stocks, just waiting for opportunity. You look at Site A, Site A is fine the way it is. Site B has had many opportunities to develop and they just passed on them. Site C and D are typical 50 by 100 parcels that can be developed as of right with a profit. Okay, the bottom line here is we're talking about certain things here. The low density growth management area is something that we should cherish, that we should hold on for subsequent generations to enjoy. This is not a who issue, which ethnic or racial group gets to enjoy the low density life. Diversity is a buzzword thrown around with reckless aplomb. How about diversity of living environment and landscape? How about preserving an area's DNA, environmental characteristics? That is what is important here. Actions by New York City and higher levels of government prove they are hell-bent on eradicating, destroying, snuffing out low-density communities. Governor Hochul attempted to throw language into the state budget. Former Council Speaker Johnson and Mayor de Blasio, through Vision 2030 and other mantras, showed distaste for low-density zoning. The Democratic National Party platform in 2020 clearly states intent on dissolution of low-density zoning. Senator Biaggi and Congresswoman Cortez, through Twitter and other social media platforms, expressed an agenda to end low-density zoning. In the Bruckner Zone text amendment review, there was a coy intent to create a contextual R5. Now we know this upzoning cannot be corralled. The proof is in the pudding. You fly under the radar. As of right development allows unimpeded smaller dwellings to be replaced with larger constructions. As of right development and more upzonings are historically tethered to other upzonings. Now, also within this, we have transit corridor issues. Being a quarter mile less from a subway, limited parking is required. Another point to be raised is that the city at some point is going to just redefine the transit zone. Now, in the event of this happening, we have to look at this, and we look at the description of our communities as transit deserts. We are not transit deserts, food deserts, or any other kind of deserts. We are an oasis within the landscape of New York's concrete canopy, a slice of suburbia that needs to be withheld, a piece of the New York City fabric that needs to be preserved, cleaned, pressed when soiled, not be torn, shred, or ripped apart. A piece of New York City that should be cherished and preserved for the future generations. And that is the way it should be. I urge you to vote no.
Time.
Perfect timing. Thank you very much, Mr. Averonic. And next up is Maria Diaz, to be followed by Andrew Chirico.
Good afternoon, City Planning Commission. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thank you for hearing my testimony today. My name is Maria, and unlike the developers and everyone who supports this upzoning, I live in Throgsneck. I didn't hear the presentation address and how the construction and increased density will impact our air quality. The Bronx already has the highest incident rate of asthma and the poorest air quality of New York. I haven't heard anything discussed about that. Our local precinct and our local FDNY is already overtaxed with covering a very large area with very little manpower. With increased crime rates across New York City and especially in the Bronx, the increased density puts myself and my family and my neighbors at an increased vulnerability during a time of crisis. Changing our current law density law opens up the floodgates for all developers to overbuild with as-of-right projects. The next thing I'd like to bring up is that the people of our city deserve choices in the types of places we live in. Suburban parts of our cities need to be preserved for those who want to live in the community like this one. Being overcrowded is a big reason why so many people left New York to other places like Florida. The Bronx Borough President, I just wanted to add on to one of the points that she made about more home ownership opportunities leading to a pathway to better futures. We require space for these kinds of projects, to building 1 and 2 family homes that require space, and these kinds of projects like this will not allow for that. Historically, development projects such as this one pushed under the affordable housing have historically led to increased rents, not lowered them. Look at the rents in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and more recently, look at what the rents are in the South Bronx. Currently, our community is more affordable than all those areas. The next thing I want to talk about is I didn't hear a response as to where the community will go to shop for food supplies if this project were to move forward and the supermarket be taken away. There was another concern about senior housing. I just want to say that in our neighborhood, most of our seniors stay in their homes, the homes that they've owned all their lives, where they've raised their children. And then we have other options too. We have the Jean Jeweler residence. We have the New York City Housing Authority, Middletown Plaza. We have Fort Schuyler House. We have Throgsneck NYCHA Senior Citizen Center. We have Little House of the Poor. The sites have also, yes, we've also talked about how these sites have been vacant and neglected. There's also, they're also owned by these developers. They've been owned by them for many years. And I think it's important for us to look at that. Bavona testified that the volume of customers that he has does not necessarily equal the amount of profit. He also said that 2,000 customers spend, and let's say 2,000 customers spend just $5 a day, that's over $300,000 a month. That is over $3 million a year. So he goes back and forth on this issue. One day he's poor, one day he's rich. As for the environmental impact, I propose that Food Town.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I'm sorry, we'll just ask everybody to keep an eye on the clock. We don't want to have to precipitously mute, but that's our. We want to be consistent across the board. Next up is Andrew.
Hello.
Andrew. Yes, I am going to the next witness now. It's Andrew Chirico, to be followed by Catherine Donnelly.
Mr. Chirico, you should be able to unmute. It looked like there is Judith Chirico as well, so we unmuted. Probably on the same line.
No luck?
No luck. We can reach out.
Okay, we'll circle back. Let's go to Catherine Donnelly and then Scott Barnard.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, hi. Thank you, everybody. And I just wanted to make this very brief. I've heard everybody's thoughts opposed and for it, and I am opposed to this. The reason being that, you know, as everybody has stated, Throgs Neck is a low-density community, and it is not like any other community in the boroughs, and it's special and is quite diverse. And people do come here from high-density neighborhoods to get away from that and to start to make Throgs Neck more like everybody else is a disservice to the community. Secondly, we do have an infrastructure issue going on. And although they want to say that we're going to have more opportunity to get, you know, transportation and things like this is untrue. Our traffic patterns right now are quite jammed up. It takes me 15 minutes just to come off Randall Avenue many times coming home from work because of the backlog coming up the street. This is only going to increase with the number of people coming into the community. We are not opposed to building new homes and having people have affordable housing. We can do this within our present zoning structure as we have. The other thing is we should think about charter schools, maybe making more schools you know, larger in that sense so that our present schools are not overpopulated. These are just some of the issues that have come up for us. I think as far as Food Town is concerned, yes, they are within a 1 mile, but there's also other supermarkets. So to say that they're the only supermarket within our area that people need to shop in is untrue. You know, there are many supermarkets within our area, Keep Food, Fine Fare, S&W, to name a few. So to bring this kind of rhetoric to the floor and say that they're the only ones that can service us is untrue. I think that the community in it as a whole is not opposed to helping anybody. However, we need to keep the structure the way it is so that we can continue living the life that we all chose and bought homes to have and to build on that. So I oppose this upzoning but I am for different opportunities. And I would thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let me just pose, were there other opportunities that you had in mind here when you say that, or was it?
Well, I think building affordable housing to make people, help people buy homes, to make them, you know, homeowners opposed to renters. You know, if you make the whole area renters, where's the home ownership? How does it help people become independently wealthy and build wealth for their families?
I guess really I'm asking is if you're, you know, in a district where you've seen a population increase by about 10,000,
right?
And you're saying that there are places where you're not opposed to new homes here. I'm just curious to know whether there are areas within the community board or within the city council district where you believe it would be suitable to add the new homes that you're talking about.
Well, I see across go up Harding Avenue, you see there are a couple of multi-family dwellings there. There are 3 family dwellings. Those are okay. I mean, those are places, and these are homes that people actually can buy into condominiums and things like that. These are some of the opportunities that I've seen come up in the neighborhood recently in the last few years. And I'm also thinking about a charter school being the opportunity as well to help expand in the school district and help people get into the schools who live in the neighborhood and not having to go outside the neighborhood for schools. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Thank you. No, but that's okay. That's okay. I understand. I heard you. I heard you clearly though, but I appreciate your responding, and I appreciate your taking the time to be with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me go to Scott Barnard to be followed by Ben Wetzler.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
We all can hear you. Welcome. You can go ahead and proceed.
Yes.
Scott, you should have the ability to unmute your mic.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
We can all hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, again, I'm going to start from the beginning. My name is Andrew Chirico. I'm a member of the Waterbury LaSalle Community and Homeowners Association with 300 family members. I'm also a member of the Coalition Against the Upzoning. Our volunteers have collected over 10,000 signatures, both electronically and handwritten, and more than 300 signed statements from the residents of the Throgs Neck and surrounding areas. These have been sent to the Department of City Planning in the Bronx office, and they were transmitted electronically to your office for this meeting. CB10 does not have a need for any new housing within the area. We have a Throgs Neck housing project with 37 buildings, 1,185 apartments. 2 of those buildings are for seniors. We're also told that 40 of those apartments are empty right now. We also have a freestanding NYCHA building at 3033 Middletown Road with 177 senior apartments. We also have 2 Mitchell Lama buildings in the area with 286 apartments at the Hazel Towers and 158 apartments at the Hutchinson Parkway Apartments. We also have a Fort Schuyler house in Throgs Neck, 138 senior apartments, which are all Section 8. We don't need any more buildings. The neighborhood has more than a dozen private real estate offices that are thriving with sales and rentals every week. We have a former motel near the Whitestone Bridge, which has become a homeless shelter. We once had 5 hospitals in the area. We now only have 2. 2 of those former hospitals have become homeless shelters. 1 has become an apartment building. Bruckner and Crosby Avenues are not large streets, as the developer wants you to believe. They are each 1 lane in each direction and congested daily because of the Interstate 95, which backs up daily and overflows into our neighborhood streets. Along with all the congestion, our fire department, which is across the street from Food Town, with daily traffic backups and emergency calls, have to be rerouted at a moment's notice. This can cause lives. I urge you to see this the way our neighborhood residents see it and deny this application to change our zoning. Build within our zoning. That's all we ask.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to note for our team that I called Mr. Bernard, but I got Mr. Chirico, but that's okay. Everybody's going to have their moment here, but I just want to flag that for our team. And I will just observe for our own record and notes here that New York City considers vacancy under 5% to be a housing emergency. And we have already heard testimony today that this community is at 2.4% vacancy. So the notion that this community board does not need new housing is just objectively incorrect. So with that, let me go to, if Scott Bernard is there, let's call him. And if not, we'll move on to Ben Wetzler.
Mr. Bernard should be able to unmute his microphone and speak. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it looks like we can reach out and see if Mr. Bernard is.
Do you want to move on to our next person? Okay. So Ben Wetzler would be next, and then we'll see where we stand with Mr. Bernard.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you, Chair Garodnick. So I started following this project because I care, deeply about affordable housing, and specifically kind of adding affordable housing in neighborhoods that don't have a lot. And as we've said earlier, this is definitely true of the area in question. But I wanted in my remarks to kind of briefly talk about home ownership opportunities because it's something that has affected my family personally in the last year or two, and kind of has been talked about a lot. The borough president brought it up. We've heard from some of the last few speakers about it, and the connection to kind of suburban low density and home ownership opportunities. Because in the last 2 years, what's been happening across the country is we've seen hundreds of thousands of single family homes in suburbs and suburban neighborhoods and cities like this one being bought up by these really large corporations, these institutional investors who have spent hundreds of billions of dollars, buying up entire streets sight unseen and everything. And they're doing it so that they can convert them from owner occupied housing into rentals. It's become a really, really big barrier to home ownership for younger couples that want to become homeowners. There's just so few homes that are available to people who want to do this and who want to buy their first home. My partner and I, spent all of last year kind of looking for, like the last year and a half looking for a home for us to purchase, and it was a very kind of stressful and financially draining experience, and we ultimately ended up not doing it. We are still renting, so it was a big disappointment for us. The biggest one of these companies in the entire country, and it is now just in the last 2 years, it's become the biggest landlord and the biggest owner of single unit homes in the entire United States, is a company called Invitation Homes, who is a subsidiary of Blackstone, which is the biggest landlord in the world. And if you look at the disclosures that this company, Invitation Homes, files with the SEC, where they describe their financial stuff and everything to their investors, they say that their business strategy, they specifically say it outright, is that they look for single family homes in neighborhoods that have very little new construction and with high legal barriers like zoning to new construction, because they know that they will then be able to raise all the rents. They'll be able to corner the market with their hundreds of billions of dollars in investment, and then they'll be able to jack it up. That they can, that they can do that, and there will be no new construction to add to the supply to siphon off demand, and then they'll just have a monopoly over the whole neighborhood. So if you're worried about threats to home ownership in single family homes, which I think a lot of people very sincerely are, and we want to do that, what you need to do is to add more rent, construct new rentals in these areas to deny companies like that kind of opportunity. And so that's why, I think it is very important that we support this project, specifically so that we don't see the kinds of single family home ownership opportunities that people in this neighborhood care so much about and feel very, connected to. We need to make sure that is something that regular people, regular couples who are trying to buy their first home can do, and not have to worry that it's all going to be kind of monopolized by these companies.
Thank you, Mr. Wetzler. Your time is up. I have to interrupt, but we appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Let me go back. Do we have Scott Bernard, or shall we move on?
Hello?
Is that you,
Hello?
Mr. Bernard?
Yes, that's me. How are you? Sorry about the
Okay,
problem.
welcome. No, it's okay. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. You still with me?
Yes, we're with you. We can hear you loud and clear.
All right, great. I just wanted to tell you that I live in close proximity to this project. I'm very against it. I never heard Jackie once mention asthma. We are 10 minutes away from Mott Haven. Mott Haven is also known as Asthma Alley here in the Bronx, and actually the whole United States. We are the worst affected area here in America. As far as traffic is concerned, I drive every morning. I take my daughter to work. During the school year, you have people triple, quadruple parked on Crosby Avenue. I cannot see how a building that's going to maintain apartments and have shopping available at early morning hours is going to allow people to enter and exit onto Crosby Avenue, either to go to Bruckner or down Crosby or any other way. As far as diversity is concerned, I'm married to a Latina. her two family members recently bought houses up here in Throgs Neck. They love it up here. They're all from the Dominican Republic. They bought it for the same reason I bought my house 20 years ago. You have a little patch of grass. You can put a pool back there, a driveway to park in. It's like being in suburbia while you're here in the Bronx. I think if you want to build, it's okay. I would like to see maybe private homes built within our zoning board and maybe made affordable to people who otherwise could not afford a house here. I think that's a better option. Again, like I said, further on, I've had a terrible, terrible flood here with the last hurricane we had back in September. I've never seen the likes of this before. I do not feel that the current sewer system and everything else can hold this. And again, like I said, and as far as like vacancies are concerned, we have an apartment building right now on Crosby Avenue going up for 30 families. A couple of blocks away on Jarvis, there's an apartment being built for 20 families. This is goes on all the time in this neighborhood. You have a single family house, it's demolished. Next thing you know, you have an apartment building. As far as rents are concerned, there's plenty of things available here. It's not anything that discriminates or anything else. It's, you know, plenty of new rentals here going up. There's plenty of apartment buildings being built. I really just want to see this either built within the current zoning or just to leave it as it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go next to Melissa Rodriguez, to be followed by Ken A.
Melissa and Ken are not in the room.
Okay, on to William Thomas, to be followed by Adam Brodheim.
Excuse me, I wasn't given the opportunity to speak. You did call my name and I've been overlooked.
Who is this? I'm sorry.
Judith, this is Judith Chirko. You're in the coming up.
You're in the queue.
Yeah.
We've got you coming. You're in about 3 from now. It sounds like your husband or other relative has spoken already. He signed up a little bit ahead of you, it seems, but you're coming soon. So we'll be to you in a minute. We're next up with Mr. William Thomas.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Beautiful. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Thomas. I serve as the Executive Director of Open New York. I'm here to testify today in support of the rezoning of Bruckner Boulevard. Open New York is an independent, grassroots pro-housing nonprofit. We support the rezoning because there's a dire need for more housing in the neighborhood and in New York City as a whole, which the more than 300 homes proposed here will help to address. I believe everyone knows on some level that New York has a terrible housing shortage, but let me add some context to the conversation. Right now, New Yorkers are facing rent increases of up to 50, 60, 70% as rent discounts offered during the pandemic expire. Homelessness is at the highest rate since the Great Depression. There are over 14,000 children that sleep in city shelters every night. So the 90 plus affordable homes that this rezoning would provide are desperately needed, especially in a council district that's only seen 54 such units built since 2014. But I also want to emphasize that the neighborhood plainly needs more housing. Out of all the community boards in the city, Bronx Community Board 10 comes in 43rd in terms of new homes permitted per capita. So in other words, when it comes to new construction, Community Board 10 might not be dead last, but it's in the bottom 10. This may not be a problem for longtime homeowners. After all, they already own their home. But for anyone looking to find a new place in the neighborhood, whether you're a newly married couple looking to buy or a senior looking to downsize to a more accessible apartment, the lack of new construction is devastating. I also want to address some opponents' quality of life concerns and emphasize this project is a clear improvement on the status quo. It replaces vacant land, a batting cage, a grocery store with a new grocery store. It will actively help local businesses by providing them with more customers. And at the end of the day, we're talking about an apartment building. It's hardly going to overwhelm or destroy the neighborhood. I want to emphasize the role of the City Planning Commission here, which is to plan for the good of all the city. The city needs affordable housing, it needs mixed income housing, and it's unlikely we'll be able to meet these needs if whole community boards or council districts just decide they won't allow it. So put it plainly, we live in a city where there aren't enough homes for the people who want to live here. It has horrifying human consequences. That's the terrible shadow over the neighborhood, the quality of life issue, the infrastructure concern we should be concerned about. So I hope the City Planning Commission can consider that and ultimately vote to support the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. Thank you for being with us. Next up is Adam Brodheim, to be followed by Judith Chirico. Ms. Chirico, you will be on deck. Okay.
Adam Brodheim is not present.
Okay, Ms. Chirico, we're back to you.
Ms. Chirico, you should be able to press *6 to unmute your phone.
No luck?
Yeah, I don't know if she stepped away or if she's having, oh, no.
Okay, can you hear me
There you
now?
go.
We can hear you. We've got you.
Okay, great. Okay, an issue that no one has brought up, but the area of Bruckner Boulevard, Crosby Avenue, and Tremont Avenue is in the direct takeoff and landing flight patterns for LaGuardia Airport, which prohibits high-rise buildings in this corridor. I believe a study would have to be requested through the FAA about airspace rights before anything of this magnitude could even be considered. Second, the Throgsneck Associates LLC has stated that this is for the betterment of our neighborhood. That's a lie. What this really is all about is their greed and the lining of their pockets. This project will in no way benefit this neighborhood. It will only further negatively impact our infrastructure and our already overcrowded schools and hospitals. Third, the applicant has stated that Bruckner Boulevard is by definition a wide street. That's another lie. In actuality, it is a one-lane service road to Interstate 95. When there is a backup, which occurs daily, that service road immediately fills with excess cars and trucks in an attempt to get around the interstate. Because of this, every artery in our neighborhood is excessively impacted, which severely handicaps fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances from reaching emergency destinations, putting civilian lives at risk. Another thing, all our schools already have after-school programs in their buildings, so we don't need another after-school facility. And there are already 2 additional supermarkets within a few blocks of Food Town. So if they think that they're the only ones, again, that's a lie. Next, this is about zoning and overcrowding, not housing. We are not opposed to housing as long as it is within our current zoning of R4A and R3A, which is one-family houses with front and backyards, 150% off-street parking for each house not to exceed 35 feet. In this neighborhood, we have 5 very active American Legion posts, which already take care of our veterans, which includes medical and housing assistance when needed. So their claim for the need for veteran housing is another falsehood. They have also tried to say that this neighborhood is not diverse enough. Well, look at the most recent census, and you'll see that diversity is not an issue here. I am a 70-year-old senior citizen who has lived in this neighborhood almost 40 years, and talking to neighbors and everybody else who have families here, if this monstrosity goes up, we're leaving. We all have a foot out the door if this monstrosity, and I have been here and I resent being pushed out of the home that I have been in for almost 40 years because of their greed, and all they want to do is line their pockets. They want to help our neighborhood, build parking for our commercial district. That's what we need, not more houses. You want to build houses, fine, but within our zoning. So I ask that the proposal be denied, and I thank you for listening to the concerns of this neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Chirico. We're going to go in a moment to Carol De Chiara. And I will just note that these sites are not within a flight path to LaGuardia that would require a height cap on the developments, just to clarify here. Okay, next, Ms. De Chiara.
Good afternoon. thank you for calling on me. I appreciate the chance to speak.
Of course.
I've worked for New York City for 33 years. I'm in the area of budget and capital funding, and I live 4 blocks away from the proposed site. And my basement got 4 feet of sewer water, not rainwater, because my sub pumps failed due to the backup of the sewers during Ida. We have 100-year storms now every year, and this has completely stressed our infrastructure, and it's going to continue to fail. In my experience as a capital person with the city, it takes about 10 years to secure funding, procure, and then we have to begin construction. So the developer stated that a new DEP pumping station is supposed to be possibly put in place. Well, at what part of the capital phase are we in? Do we have the funding? And when will that be operational? Because this is going to happen now and not 10 years from now. Please note, also, as previously stated, the environmental assessment traffic study was performed in September of 2020. School was not even in session, and the traffic was extremely light. And that traffic reference in the EAS is on page 174. So New York City DOT during this time ceased all traffic studies during the period during COVID because it did not reflect accurately that during this period, the traffic, and it does not compare to what is going on today. The site that's 2505 Bruckner Boulevard, which is the trucking distribution center, we do not have a traffic study concluding all these trucks that will be coming back and forth onto that site. The traffic study left that out of the proposal, and it should be included. So in my experience, the EAS now needs to be completely revised and redone, and it should not be accepted by any of you. And that's what I have to say about the environmental. As far as the other stuff, parking spaces that they've mentioned are going to be shared with the supermarket, not only just for the apartments. Lowering the height of the building will not help our current infrastructure problem now. We have one overcrowded high school that reaches from the south to the West Bronx. One for the entire area. And I'd like to say congrats to the 10,000 new people who came to our low density area. They made the choice to move here, and I believe that's the reason why. The express bus service has been cut. It has not increased. And this project does not include any climate friendly initiatives. There are no green initiatives in this. And I love climate change initiatives. And I don't see a garden. I don't see solar. I don't see anything that would help the area and maybe help the area. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next up is let's see, is next up Denise Sakili?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Denise Eckley. I live in Schuylerville, a few blocks from Site A. I've submitted written testimony opposing the proposal online, which speaks to my concerns at greater length, but I'd like to address some points here. I'd like to comment specifically on the Borough President's recommendation. Borough President Gibson addresses the community concerns about infrastructure, stating that there is clearly an existing problem that needs to be addressed. And she refers to sanitation, traffic, schools, flooding problems, lack of emergency services, and the traffic backup of buses at PS 14 during school hours. I disagree with her opinion that the proposed units will not dramatically impact the local infrastructure. I would also like to note that the traffic backup at PS 14 is not simply buses, school buses or city buses, and it cannot be addressed by either the transit authority or the school bus system, though there are school buses on both sides of that street. The traffic is largely parents who double and triple park their cars at drop-off and at dismissal, making it nearly impossible to drive on Crosby from Baisley to Bruckner, as many people have noted. Commissioner Cerullo's note about the timing of the traffic studies is particularly relevant here, as in the fall of 2020, schools were operating on a hybrid schedule, and the traffic at PS 14 was nowhere near its typical volume. As to Mr. Cass's comments about PS 14 and the community's opposition to its previous expansion, the school's expansion aligned with the rezoning of School District 8, which increased enrollment at PS 14 to lessen the overcrowding at PS 71, which is another neighborhood school. In addition, many residents experienced, as you've heard, severe flooding in our homes and our vehicles during Hurricane Ida last September, with extensive property damage and cars literally floating off the ground as water came in waves down our streets and the sewers couldn't handle it. We saw literally, as cars drove down the street, the cars would wave. They would literally just wiggle on the water. Borough President Gibson also stated that if the city is going to be a city of yes, that we need to ensure that the infrastructure is capable of handling any increase in density. She then recommends that the mayor recommends asking the mayor to dedicate resources to fixing the infrastructure problems. However, the infrastructure issues are not going away, and they are not the responsibility of the developer. Addressing these problems needs to happen now. We don't need to have the project go forward and then maybe later address the infrastructure problems. I have some other comments, but I'll submit them by email. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We will surely get it. Thank you. Okay, next up is Anthony Ferrara, to be followed by Wendy Cortez.
Anthony Ferrara is not present.
How about Wendy Cortez?
She is.
Great.
Hi, can you guys, all right. You can hear me, is that right?
We can.
Okay, thank you for,
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to participate today and the other community members. I am a resident of this area for the past 30 years, and prior to that for over 20 years near St. Raymond's, and I oppose the rezoning. I think that in particular, the density, the height of the buildings does not fit the community, the nature of the community. And I definitely think that if a development is going to happen, like some of the other speakers, it ought to be within the current zoning regulations. And if any changes or conditions are placed, certainly I think that buildings that would be maybe 3 stories tall would be more in line with what is in the neighborhood where I live currently. Like right around the block, there's like 2 smaller buildings, I think maybe like 3 stories, maybe 4, I can't remember right now. But I do think this is an incredibly diverse community. I'm Puerto Rican. On my block, there are people that are Puerto Rican, Italian, Swedish, South Asian. Their community diversity is continuing to change. And I think as many people have stated, it's because people want to live someplace that is lesser density, but that has all the benefits of being in the city. People don't want to have to move up to Mayapack, right? People have lived here for many years. I think that it's a red herring to say that without this development as currently structured, we are not serving our senior citizens and we are not serving our veterans. There are veterans that live on my street. My cousin, who is a Vietnam veteran, lived in the Bronx, in Throgs Neck and Schuylerville his whole life until he just moved to Florida last year in his 70s. My neighbor, who is 80-something years old, has lived in the same house around the block from me since the 1930s when she was like 9 years old or something like that, right? So I think that to say that this structure as currently planned serves affordable housing, serves senior citizens, serves veterans is really false. We're trying to have really the financial needs of specific property owners met with zoning that doesn't match what the community needs. And for that reason, I think that if a structure is going to be built, it needs to be lower zoning, and also home ownership. Why not make it condos or co-ops? Why not make it more 2-bedroom units so that families actually can have affordable using? Why not make it more of a Mitchell Lama maybe style so that affordable housing is in the community, but that fits the nature of the community and that allows the infrastructure to catch up with the new density that would then be coming about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Next up is Alona Delgado.
Alona and Roxanne Delgado are not present.
Okay, well then the next on my list, and perhaps last on the list, is Jason Mendez. But what I will do at this moment is just do a final call here. Jason Mendez is the last person that I have signed up at this moment in time to speak, but obviously we don't want to end the hearing before we have heard from everybody who wishes to be heard. So please note, we've got the information up on the screen as to how to participate in the public meeting. Ryan, is there anything to be said about that that's worth, we got a taker. I love it. We even got a taker, even as I'm making the pitch. We have one extra person signing up. Ryan, is there anything to say about how to participate at this moment?
The upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal to sign up to speak there. And there's also the hotline, the dial-in participant hotline, if we can spotlight that. There we go. The numbers are listed on the screen and the instructions in terms of the meeting ID and passwords as well.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, let's call Jason Mendez to be followed by Janine Franciosa.
Okay, guys, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, my name is Jason Mendez, and I'm only 20 years old. I spoke at the Bronx Borough President's meeting, and I'm distraught that New York City is thinking of removing our low-density area. I am completely against this program, and I'm completely against upzoning this area. I lived on 162nd Street between Girard and River Avenue. And we know, my mother and I, who's single African-American, know what it's like to be pushed out of our neighborhood. The New York Yankees and Chase Bank have teamed up in that area in order to make that a commercial strip and not a residential home. Growing up on 162nd Street was a great experience. We had a park across the street right by the 4 train. We had Yankee Stadium across the street from there. But once the Yankees decided to move across the stadium, everything changed. Move across the street, everything changed. A private park that was supposed to be sacred was removed. We lobbied to try to get it out of our neighborhood and have the stadium stay in the current area. The stadium moved without the community board's decision. We had filed a lawsuit and we lost. Our block on 162nd Street became a private de facto block for NYPD personnel, and other people looking to park for Yankee Stadium. To drive down our own block, we had to go to New York City Police Department, present IDs, and just to walk down our block, move them iron gates. It was a travesty. So we moved up to this area in order to escape from this urbanization and being pushed out by development, but it looks like it's going to happen again. I believe it is strictly unfair that the Bronx has the least amount of low density areas. I look at Bayside, I look at Forest Hills, Queens, they have R1 and R2 areas, to which the Bronx only has 2 or 3, with the exception of Fieldston having the most. Not many people can afford Fieldston in this area. I know I can't pay $5 and $6 million for an estate in Fieldston, but we can pay what we have for our homes, and we've worked really hard to maintain our homes. We have R3, R4, and some in this area R5 density. We don't need more density. Depriving people of home ownership does allude to the times of Robert Moses, and it's sad because the Bronx has the highest population of Latino and African Americans as opposed to any other borough. I think that it's a travesty that the city of New York is trying to promote this project, and that approving this project will only set a precedent that New York City, and particularly the Bronx, is for sale by development, and that people in the Bronx don't really deserve homes. So my mother, who's African American, single, moved up here in 2014 in order to escape that, but it looks like this development will push us out eventually. And this is a sad but true reality for many Bronxites. People have moved out of New York City, moved to Westchester, Connecticut, and surrounding towns. Why is it that that they have to leave the borough and leave the city that they love in order to have a home in their own neighborhood. I think it's depriving people of a fundamental right of American ownership. And I think that it's really against the state of New York. We have a lot of untapped potential in our borough.
Great. Thank you very much. Let me go now to Janine Franciosa, and Ms. Franciosa is the last person I have signed up to testify, so this will be our final chance here. So please do sign up if you have something to say and want to be heard today on this item on the Bruckner Sites rezoning calendars number 10 and 11. With that, Ms. Franciosa, the floor is yours.
We're trying to call her in at the moment through Zoom, so it might be a moment.
Okay.
Thank you. Janine, I think we see you now.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
On. I know you, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I believe Mr. Serini and someone else is still waiting to get on, and they were having trouble connecting. So please, hopefully respectfully give them the opportunity to talk as well. But I will tell you that I am at that.
Go ahead.
This is the
Yes,
first
go
time
ahead.
I'm
I'm
doing
sorry.
this.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm doing this. I am a lifelong resident of Pelham Bay, and I'm against this development in this form. We have my entire life. We've welcomed change in this neighborhood. We've seen a lot of plots be built up. We've seen areas with entire blocks be built up where the old, the American Indian Museum used to be. And it's not what it is. Where I grew up is not what it is now, and some good, some bad, but all still within an appropriate change management for us to maintain our character. But what is being proposed will drastically change that character of what is a diverse, hardworking, middle-class families that can live and have the opportunity and choice to live in a low-density, low-impact neighborhood within the borders of New York City that many of us service through our employment or volunteer. Mr. Peter Bavona had talked about legacy, that he wants to make sure his family continues to have income. I think that's cute. You know, I'd love the opportunity to sacrifice where I live for the financial security of somebody else and someone else's family that doesn't live here. That's nice. But what about the legacy of the people in this neighborhood seek to preserve the legacy of where we grew up and how we want to live? I'm a little confused why we're suddenly on trial for not having affordable housing. When we were purposely zoned as low density. Was the local community and its leaders even given the opportunity in the past couple of years or a decade to rectify that or notify that we had to? Why are we going with the first opportunistic greedy developers? If other developers were given the option to develop, perhaps other developers would have had more suitable change management here. And there are unfortunately a lot of illegal apartments here that are affordable. We do have affordable housing. Perhaps you should work with community leaders to provide a pathway of making apartments in their home legal and affordable. There are going to be now and certainly in the future a lot of commercial areas with the onslaught of online ordering, brick and mortars going away, and have been heavily impacted by online capabilities and work from home. So has the City Planning Commission thought of working with already built, potentially vacant commercial areas in this neighborhood and elsewhere in the Bronx, and that would be more viable options to fulfill apparently this manufactured need that you all speak of, that we need to have more housing? I think it's really insulting for people that don't live here to testify in support of this development. Why stop there? Why don't you ask someone in Ohio how they think the City Planning Commission should develop policy? I'm sure you wouldn't appreciate it, and nor do we. In reference to the developer seemingly using the excuse of recreation being needed, we live near the largest park in New York City,
and multiple schools with gyms. We have plenty of recreation, including one school, though, that is actually vacant, Our Lady of the Assumption.
I think you were just muted. Your time was up. I'm very, very sorry that caught you mid-sentence there, but we certainly got your testimony. We heard you loud and clear. I do note that there was a reference to some other people who wanted to come in and testify here, so I don't want to end the day here too quickly, but I do not yet see anybody signed up. So I'm going to ask my team behind the scenes if they've gotten any further requests before we close today.
We had a few handful of folks that were called previously and weren't present that we do try to get them in. We have Ilona Delgado, who was called prior, and I believe we have her in the room now.
Great. Let's bring her up.
Okay. Ms. Delgado, you should be able to unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to talk about, I'm not an old resident of the Throsneck area. I actually came from NYCHA. I grew up in NYCHA, my family lives in NYCHA, and my mother lives in a NYCHA senior building. I was one of the lucky ones. I lived in High Bridge and the Concourse area, and I had a HUD co-op apartment co-op where I was lucky enough to own through the governmental programs. Unfortunately, it was about 4 stories high, and they built up. They started building up, and it became so overcrowded. And I learned about Throsneck and its low-density lifestyle, and was lucky enough to buy my first home. And to hear, I'm totally opposed the upzone. I am with affordable, allowing folks to have affordable lifestyle. But it's concerning because if you look at 138th Street in the Bronx, where they're building over 7,000 rentals and less than 2,000 will be affordable, it's concerning to me that the narrative of affordable is being used by developers to step their foot into our communities, when I experienced and lived the dynamic of bringing in new development and then going high and pushing us out. Just like the young gentleman that spoke, the 18-year-old that lived by Yankee Stadium, and they were really much pushed out. It's the same thing that's concerning, and all of us are worried about in Throsneck. I do believe that I'm all for affordable senior veterans, but it should be within the zone. That's all I'm advocating for, and to really listen to the people that left high density communities. Some of the folks that spoke do not live in this community and are lucky enough to live in a very low density lifestyle. I'm all for it, as I expressed. I have family in NYCHA. I have my mother in a senior NYCHA building because they cannot afford to live in Manhattan and other areas, and they came to the Bronx because of the lifestyle and as well of the low cost.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have Roxanne Delgado with us. Ms. Delgado, if you're here.
Yes, I am, Commissioner. Thank you.
We'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. First, thank you for allowing me to speak. As you know, my name is Roxanne Delgado. I live in Community Board, City Council District 13 in Palm Parkway, so I don't live near the impacted area. But recently, I was knocking doors for a candidate that sadly lost, and I have had the pleasure to speak to many residents in that area. And one thing I noticed, the demographics has changed since 2004. It's very diverse, and I can say almost less than half, like at least 40% are Latinos. And I wonder, why is it that when a community is more diverse, then they decide to upzone? In 2004, when it was not diverse, they downzoned. And now that is a large number of homeowners are Black and brown people, now they want to upzone when they bought those homes in very large and high prices, and they're still being mortgaged and working double shifts to pay their mortgage, especially now during this time where economy is not doing too good. And I, like I said, I live in Palm Parkway, and I have homeowners here who bought their houses like 20, 35 years ago when they said to me the area is very nice. And now that now the area is not too nice, again, it seems like whenever there's homeownership that's by Black and brown people, for some reason the area deteriorates, not protected. And when people say that they're going to move out of the neighborhood, those are the old timers, mostly Caucasians. And when they have that white flight, that neighborhood going to deteriorate, because when the neighborhood's not diverse, when it's all Black and brown homeowners, it's going to downgrade and be, unfortunately, an area that nobody wants to live at. So this is why I'm very concerned about this project, that it's targeting Black and brown homeowners, which I don't agree with because I'm a brown person. And in fact, I think more brown people should have home ownership. Second, I feel like as a person who was canvassing for a candidate, I feel that most people feel the reason why they didn't want to vote is because they feel like they're not heard, that special interests, unions, nonprofit groups, their voices are heard louder than the community. And if a community, and I have not met one person who was for this upzoning that lives in that area. I am all for affordable housing because I also need affordable housing, but why do we have to destroy a community to build affordable housing? For me, that seems like we're doing more harm than good. If the community itself, not one person, at least find at least 10% of the community that supports this project, I'll be for it. But the community is not for it. This is why we have people not voting, because they're not being heard, even when they're organized, even when they get involved, even when they speak to the electeds, they call, they email, and they're ignored for a small special interest of people who don't live in this community, who don't have to be directly impacted by these decisions. I am not for this project for those two reasons, because it's targeting Black and brown homeowners and it's ignoring community input. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next up is, I believe we have John Serini in the room.
Had John Serini in the room.
Okay.
Let's see if we've. See him. I think he might have dipped out again, unfortunately.
Here's what I'm going to do, Ryan. Let's just.
We just got him now. Asking him to
Okay.
mute. Mr. Serini, you can press *6 to unmute your phone. Okay. It might be technical difficulties. I'm not sure if it's on the Zoom end or the phone.
Okay.
Okay.
While Mr. Serini is dialing in or resolving this issue, I will note
we lost him,
close
so yeah.
We're coming close, if not at the very end of our hearing here. I would like to give Mr. Serini another 60 seconds to see if he reemerges. Ryan, what is the procedure for, is there any procedure for further testimony if people wish to offer it?
Certainly, testimony can be sent to the Department of City Planning. The snail mail address is on our website, can be found on our website, planning.nyc.gov. There's also a link to providing testimony via the website there as well.
Okay, thank you for sharing that information. You and I are talking slowly enough to give anybody a chance here if they want to emerge, or if Mr. Serini is back, but it sounds like we have nobody. Is that correct?
Yeah, it looks like we've exhausted all the speakers.
All right, so I will just ask officially if there's anybody else present who would like to speak on this item on the Bruckner sites. Seeing none, this hearing is closed. Madam Secretary, is there any other business before the commission today?
No, Chair Grodnick, there is no other business before the commission, but I do have some public information to share. For those of you who are unable to or did not wish to testify, You can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal, through DCP's website, or by mailing your comments to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271.
Great, thank you very much. And I will just take a moment here to thank everyone who took the time out of their day to come and testify on these issues. Certainly, we heard a number of different views on the subject of the Bruckner sites, and we know that these are difficult issues for people. And we also appreciate that folks have taken some time out of their day to be with us. I want to thank the staff of the Department of City Planning, as well as the commissioners of the City Planning Commission for their time today, and for all of them for their work in helping us do this important work. And with that, this remotely held meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Ready?
Thank you.
The time is 1:20 p.m.